Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Alderman Muhammad.
Present.
Chairman Conway.
Present.
7 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The order, this morning we have housekeeping. We're trying to finish up this year's city's budget. We will do that first. We have a community improvement district. We just have to have a quick public hearing. I do know that nobody has signed up for that. And then we will begin testimony on our two bills, which are mechanisms to help keep our police department stable and intact. And that would also apply to our firefighters and our other public safety resources that we provide to the city. Mr. Paul Payne, you're recognized on Board Bill number 1. And each of you should have what E&A sent us back on Board Bill number 1, and that's what Mr. Payne's going to go over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the committee. Yeah, what you should have before you is a letter from E&A. E&A, the Board of E&A met yesterday and considered the request from the Ways and Means Committee on budget amendments. There are also a number of other amendments that were considered as well. And so what you have before you is a summary, is the letter from E&A as well as a summary of those changes. And I'll walk you through each one of those. And again, I'm operating off the summary page, the first page of that packet. In the response, direct response to the Ways and Means request, the Board of Aldermen had a request for some salary adjustments as well as the addition of a financial analyst and clerk position. That was a total of, the total amount that was approved was $133,000. That was basically your request. It does have some salary savings, noting that it's not going to be right away, but it was the request as requested. As well as the communications division amount of 60. That's pretty much what was requested from the Ways and Means Committee. That was $65,000. Now there's some other proposed changes. The mayor's office had recently been awarded a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation, which was a grant funded position. It doesn't affect our general fund budget, and so that'll be in a special fund there. Forestry division, there had been some discussion, though not formally requested from Ways and Means, about adding $100,000 for weed cutting. That was added. There was a vacant position, however, that was cut to help offset that cost, and so the total increase was $58,000. Circuit Attorney's Office, there's been some discussion there about what we can address on that in that office. There was a grant fund position which did not have any fringe benefits, and so those were asked to be funded through the general fund, and that was $11,600. City Courts is an actual reduction to help offset some of the other increases of about $115,000 in both temp employees and provisional judges. The Building Division, there was restoration of about 2 building inspectors and cut of 1 vacant plumbing inspector position for a total increase of $52,000. Corrections and Justice Center, there was a reduction there and just in overtime projections. Homeless Services, the $100,000 increase there, that's for continued support and rent for the temporary shelter for the homeless. Facilities management, this is just a revised projection on utility expenditures for the next fiscal year, and that was a decline of $160,000. As well as we do have 2 bills refinancing a couple of outstanding of our lease agreements related to the juvenile detention center, as well as a police capital, and that reduced our cost, the amount that's being paid from general fund to the capital fund by $80,000. And so with those reductions, that offsets in total $65,000, which is the amount that we would not be receiving from the communications division to offset that increase. And that's the general fund. Also included in this packet is the Senior Citizen Services Fund. That's that nickel that went on the nickel levy that was approved. This is sort of an odd bird in that it's not really coming to the city, it's going to the commission that was approved, but the governing body needs to approve that budget. So that has been incorporated into this packet. And on the capital fund, there's not a dollar change there on the 1220s and ward, but it's got your detail for the ward accounts. If you remember, when we submitted the budget, it was just a lump sum number, but now we've gotten the detail from each of the aldermen, so that's been included, as well as the neighborhood parks and metro parks detail was included as well. And so that, I believe, should represent the entirety of the changes that was approved by ENA yesterday.
Okay, and then just two questions on the refuse. We haven't included the overtime we'll experience if we don't get the raise in the refuse fee.
No.
And how much is that overtime?
Um,
I mean, I know we talked about a number yesterday.
Well, they had said up to $600,000.
Okay, so we don't have that budgeted. Okay, and how many positions in the final analysis have we eliminated in this budget, if you remember off the top?
Overall total, I believe it was something like 53. We are adding a few back here. So you're in the 50 territory there.
Okay, so 50 jobs eliminated. Okay. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Yes, Alderman.
Can you give me a little bit more detail on, because I know we asked for 3 positions with the building division, and the importance of that is very critical, and I see that we only got 2.
That's correct. I mean, we were trying to accommodate as much as we could with the funds that we were able to identify as a reduction. So we added the 2, and that's what we were able to accommodate.
Okay, I'm still going to be coming back talking about that again. You know, one of the things about running a city, if we're going to get real serious about it, is to be more responsible when it comes to the ability to provide the appropriate support services for those things that are bringing revenue into the city. So the building division is one of those divisions. We have all this new construction, we have all these new businesses that are expanding, and the building division plays a critical part. And the fees that they collect pay a critical part to supporting their division. So for me, I'm still not happy, but I know we have to move on. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right. I would move that we adopt the changes as sent back by the Board of ENA to Board Bill number 1.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the changes by the Board of ENA. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Chairman Conway.
Aye.
6 aye votes, 1 present.
At this time, I would move that we pass Board Bill number 1 out of committee with a due pass recommendation to the full Board of Aldermen.
Second and previous roll.
It's been moved and seconded that Board Bill number 1 as amended come out of committee with a due pass recommendation. There's been a request for previous roll. Seeing no objection, Board Bill number 1 comes out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And on Board Bill number 1, you're fine, because ENA, I don't see the members of ENA here. They sat on it for a couple of weeks. We have to have it passed by June 30th, so we'll second read it tomorrow and then perfect and suspend and final pass it by June 29th. That would be the right day, or June 30th. So we'll be right under the wire. I've never been this late with the bill before. The next bill we have is Board Bill, it's the Community Improvement District. And there's this in front of us. Board Bill number 45, and we will recognize, thank you. We will recognize Mr. Bill Keeling. Alderman Roddy is not here, but this was scheduled for a public hearing 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they have to put out legal notices. Is there anyone here to testify on Board Bill number 45? It is a public hearing, so I have to ask and make sure there's no one being denied that opportunity. All right, Mr. Keeling, you proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Bill Keeling. I'm an attorney at Thompson Coburn, and I've been representing the City Foundry project. That's a project that's been moving through passage at your Board of Aldermen. You've already approved a TIF and a redevelopment agreement. The redevelopment agreement's been signed. Committee took up yesterday the note, the HUD's committee took up the note ordinance yesterday and moved that out. This is a piece of that. It's pretty common for TIFs to include this. Alderman Roddy has asked if the committee would be willing to continue this bill over till next week. There's a couple of items he wants to look at in the board bill itself. So what we'd ask is that you just basically continue this till next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
It's moving fast. Mr. Walterman, is the mayor ready? I'm a little early for her. Okay. And then we will hear the other two bills. While we're waiting, I will ask Mr. Valmer to come up, our deputy collector of revenue, to just give us some numbers and analysis on payroll taxes. Mr. Valmer?
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Tom Vollmer, Deputy Collector of Revenue for the City of St. Louis. This morning I was asked to appear before you to give you some numbers as far as the payroll expense tax is concerned, which would impact if this bill were to see fruition. My rough estimate is somewhere between $11 to $12 million. And it's a very conservative estimate of what this additional revenue would bring into the city.
Okay, so, and that's based on the top.
What we did was we analyzed the top non-for-profits in the city as well as some other known ones, and we took a look at their overall wages as what their withholding numbers are, and we did the mathematical calculations. We did remove, some of the non-for-profits do have their withholding.
You're going to have to
Oh,
pull
I'm
that
sorry.
microphone.
I'm sorry. Do you want me to start over?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. We did an analysis on the payroll expense tax, and we took the top 20 not-for-profits in the city of St. Louis, looked at their 1% withholding on the earnings tax, and we did the mathematical calculations, removing out, some of the not-for-profits have multiple locations also in St. Louis County, which are not subject to the earnings tax, but they are withholding on city residents. And those city residents are not subject to this payroll expense tax because their performance is outside the city limits. So my best estimate is $11 to $12 million.
All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Valmer? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the other thing is we had contacted the city assessor, and we obviously have a dire need to provide for our police and public safety going forward. From the big picture, we have about $14 billion worth of real estate that's been valued, and real estate taxes are being paid on it. Conservatively, we have about $3 billion worth of real estate that is exempt and owned by exempt organizations. And, that would generate, in the big scheme of things, that would generate about $80 million. And most other cities in the nation have gone ahead and made accommodations regarding that. But what it really tells you at the board here is that north of 20% of the value of the property in the city of St. Louis is exempt. And we continue to have an ever-shrinking population base to pick up that difference. But I just think it's important. We have the numbers when we get to Board Bill 58. We'll go through that in a little bit more detail. But most cities in the nation, they're doing pilots charging 40 to 60%. If we were to do something like that, you would be looking at $32 million being added between the schools and the city general revenue fund and a lot of the bond payments that we're required to make. We have here this morning, we're honored to have the mayor of the city of St. Louis, Mayor Cruzen. It's got a nice ring to that. You're recognized on, I think it's 60, Board Bill 60.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for letting me come back for a few minutes to talk about this bill. Mr. Chairman, do we have the committee substitute before us?
We do. No, we're going to hand it out now. Thank you. And I move that we adopt committee substitute for Board Bill number 60.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt committee substitute for Board Bill number 60. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad.
Pass.
Chairman Conway.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderman Muhammad. 4 aye votes, 2 abstain.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Mayor, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Board Bill number 60, committee substitute is before you. I do have a newspaper article here that if you wouldn't mind just passing that out. Whoop, I'm so sorry. So sorry. That would be appreciated. So that was the newspaper article that's being passed out now was the headline a couple of weeks ago, really just comparing what we are paying our police department to what some other departments are paying. That happens to be the approximate starting salaries on the front page. Let me back up, though, and say that, I think it is, we are under we are working every day to reduce violence in our city, and this is just one piece of that violence reduction that plan that we have in place and that we're working on every day. But this is an important piece. The board bill that is before you would be a 1/2 cent sales tax increase that would be put before the voters, if you see fit, in November of this year, so that we could ascertain whether or not we want to move forward with that. As you probably know, a 1/2 cent sales tax raises about $20 million, $19,500,000 is the estimate we're using now. So it raises about $20 million. And what this board bill proposes is, and if you want to go to Exhibit 1 at the last page of the board bill, and certainly you all have input into this, but this is, what my department and what I thought was kind of a reasonable way of moving forward on this, and that would be that the police department of this $20 million would get about $13 million. The fire department, because of pay parity, would get about $5.5 million. The circuit attorney's office, and I know that you all have heard from or are aware that the circuit attorney has some budget needs as well, and so the circuit attorney would get $1.2 million out of this, out of the $19 million, and that would add up to the total of $19,500,000. Now, reducing violence is not all about cops. It's partly about law enforcement, but certainly there are other things that need to happen along that score. And so, as you know, the use tax would go up if the sales tax passed. And so there's a proposal here that the use tax, we would use about $1 million for summer jobs and after-school jobs for young people 16 to 24. We would use about $1 million for additional recreation programs, which is, can be summer or during the school year. We would put about $1 million into social work and mental health workers, because we know that a fair amount of the issues that we're dealing with on the streets are really a result of not having enough mental health services and social services, and then $1 million for public defenders. And that might strike you as unusual, but here's my thinking on that. We want to move people through our MSI and the Justice Center. And part of the impediment to that is that the state, which generally pays for or not generally, the state does pay for public defenders, but the state has not funded public defenders to the point that there are enough public defenders to help us move these cases through. And so faster justice is better justice, so if there's someone in MSI or the jail and they're waiting, they're all pre-trial there, as you know, but if they're waiting, then the faster we can get them to trial, and I think having another $1 million, we'd put $1.2 million to the circuit attorney and $1 million for the public defender. So that is a suggestion, and of course, you know, this is a board bill before you, so we would want your input on that, but this is a suggestion for how, if we were able to pass a half-cent sales tax in November, how we might be able to spend those funds.
And you've brought people with you to give us the details.
I did. We have here today, we have Tim O'Connell, the Chief of Staff. We have Chief Larry O'Toole. We have Operations Director Todd Walterman here today. One of the things that I would pass out to you in the event you want to look at, and this was prepared by Budget Director Paul Payne, is just if we were going to give police a raise and fire a raise, well, how would that actually break out? Because you can't just give a raise, but you've got to pay the additional Social Security, you've got to pay the additional pension obligations and those kinds of things. So if you're interested, I could pass out this sheet.
If you've got 8 of those, that would be great. If you don't, we'll
Nope,
make copies.
I do.
Okay. And looking at the Post-Dispatch article from a couple of weeks ago, it's missing 2 factors. One is how dangerous it is in the city of St. Louis to being a police officer as compared to those other communities, or at least the percentages of encountering serious dangerous activities. I know the chief is here, and I know we've had police officers shot last night, and that happens all too often as of late. Now, the other thing is we do provide reasonable retirement benefits here, and those are not compared, you know, on this little schedule.
You're absolutely correct about that. I think that's a whole another subject, or maybe we'd take it up as part of this subject, but yes.
Okay, and does anyone, just as to what the mayor testified, she'll have the detailed people up here in a minute. Does anyone else have questions for the mayor at this time?
I do.
Alderwoman Davis.
Good morning, Madam Mayor.
Good morning, Alderwoman.
When I look back here in Section 6, and it talks about where the funds will be deposited, can you explain to me the reasoning why it's not our office with the comptroller administering these funds, receiving and administering the funds?
No, I can't really. I believe that all of the funds are deposited in a special fund, and these would be no different than that. I don't know if there's anybody here, maybe Tim could address that, so.
I think it's probably really
General standard language.
Paul, in section number 6 of this ordinance, it says all revenue returned to the city from this tax authorized by the ordinance shall be deposited with the treasurer of the city, and all expenditures thereof shall be by an appropriate ordinance. That might be something we should,
I think it's something you should look at.
okay. Yeah, it should be. There was no intention to have it be any different than any other sales
Yeah,
tax.
and that's what we normally do, is we normally handle these kinds of things
Okay.
through the comptroller's office. I would make a recommendation that we move toward that
Yes,
policy continued.
I would agree. We should do whatever is ordinary, and this is not anything different than that.
Are there any other questions at this time?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. It's Alderman Moore.
Okay.
Why is there such difference between the fire department and the police department and the circuit attorney's office?
Well, you know we have pay parity between the police department and the fire department. So there are about 1,300 police officers in the table of organization here. And there are, I think it's 581, is that the right number, Paul? 580-something firefighters. So if the police officers get a $1,000 raise, the fire department officers get a $1,000 raise. There are just fewer of them.
So why do we have such a small amount of money going to the circuit attorney's office?
Circuit attorney, I met with her twice recently, and last week.
They
when-
weren't in the first board bill, they was in the, just came up in the committee substitute, right?
The first board bill that was put in did not actually have this attachment attached to it. It was just a bill to introduce the half-cent sales tax. So within the last week, I met with the circuit attorney. Her request was for she said she needs $700,000 to give some raises, fill some positions. $250,000 she needs for, excuse me, it's a paperless system. There's a name for it, but to go from paper to an electronic system. She also is interested in having some victim protection services through her office so that it's easier to get people to testify. So the $1.2 million is more than she had originally asked for, but it's a placeholder number in here. So
That
it can be
12 million.
1.3, it could be 1 million, you know, but I think what this is intended to be is a recognition that when you are talking about law enforcement is more than police. Law enforcement is the circuit attorney. Law enforcement is the public defenders. You know, there's a whole circle. Law enforcement is the judges. There's a whole circle of folks that are involved in law enforcement, and certainly the circuit attorney's office is one of those. So that's why it's in here, in recognition of that.
You know, I like the interim chief, and I have a lot of relatives on the police department. I went down on Washington between 14th and 12th, and there were 18 police officers in one block. And I'm told that at night, after 3 o'clock or whatever, we don't have police patrols, and that gives the criminal the opportunity to do what he wanted because he knows that the police is not coming. What assures me that when we get this money for the police department, putting more police on the street is not gonna solve the problem. Visibility and patrol is what I need because the criminals have gone amok. The city gone wild. And I live it at the 4th of July every day of my life. Shooting,
Right.
shooting. They know when I call, they say, how you doing, Alderman Moore? Because they know exactly who it is, who's gonna be calling about the shootings.
Right.
What am I assured that this is gonna help solve or slow down some of the criminal element in the process that this whole city has? It's on the north side right now, but it's gonna trickle because they're gonna run out of stuff to take from me.
Sure.
And steal from me. So I want to know what assures us that this $12 million that we're allocating is going to help solve crime.
Well, where we're at now is we have police officers, 2 to 3 police officers leaving, retiring, quitting, otherwise leaving the police department every pay period. So you're talking about in the neighborhood of 75 or 80 police officers a year are leaving the department. We are having trouble recruiting officers, hiring new officers, and retaining the officers that we have now. So we're down, we were supposed to have around 1,300 officers, and we're down around 1,200. Now, you know, it depends on if you count the people that are in the academy or you don't count those folks, but we're down a number of officers. And so in order to recruit new officers and keep existing officers, we have to pay them competitively. Now, you mentioned, and I think this is a step in the right direction. This bill, and I do want to be clear about this bill does not propose to add new officers above the 1,300 that we already have budgeted. This isn't making a promise that we're going to, but we don't have the 1,300 right now. We only have, say, 1,200, or I'm sure the chief will tell me the real number, you know, the exact number today. But we don't have those 1,300, so we need to be able to hire up to those 1,300 officers, and we need to pay them competitively so they're not leaving to go to other departments. Because, you know, that's a revolving door. When we train people, They go through our academy, and we have a very, good academy, 28 weeks, I believe it is. They go through our academy, and then they start working, and they work here a year or 2 years, and then if they, we've trained them, we want to be able to keep them, and part of that is pay. Now, you did mention Washington Avenue, and I don't know who those officers were that you saw there, but I do know that Downtown Partnership recently, I read this in the paper a couple of months ago maybe, they are taking a large part of their CID money and using it to hire off-duty officers. So while they were St. Louis City police officers, they may have been working secondary, or, a number of them may have been working secondary.
It seems to be a threat that if you don't raise my salary, I'm leaving. So maybe when we train these people, we should, this isn't me saying these people, when we train these officers, we should put a statute of limitation that they have to stay with us for a certain period of time for us to give them that type of training. So they won't run and threaten us, police officers threatening us, telling us if you don't raise my salary, I'm leaving, and leave a big void in the city and with
Sure.
a whole lot of crime. So maybe we should put some type of statute in there to limit them
Right.
from leaving us.
I think that there already is something like that, but, I want to say it's 4 years, but it's a certain period of time. But quite honestly, we don't want the 5-year officer, the 7-year officer, the 10-year officer to leave either. I mean, we need experience in all departments, but certainly on our police department. So I understand what I understand your point here, which is that we train them, and police officers they are paid while they're in training, not at the same rate as after they graduate, but they're paid a little bit less. But no, I understand your point. So,
All right, and we have the chief here with us today, Alderman, and he will be testifying in a few moments.
It doesn't ease my pain, Conway. Thank you, man.
thank you.
I realize that. I know that we'll need the circuit attorney to come in. Part of the problem is with the budget process, if she's 12 or 13 lawyers short, she's got that money.
Correct.
And so she doesn't need this much. So I know that we've allocated the money. I'm looking over at Paul based on her table of organization.
Sure.
And so there will be some additional funds there. I'd like the chief or someone to, Mayor, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks
You
for letting
stay
me
in the
come
room
back.
if you'd like, but I'd like the chief or someone to walk me through this $8 million and go over what St. Louis County is doing.
Okay, great.
The Chief O'Toole.
We'll call the chief up, and then if you got questions specifically about the use of the $8 million, you might have to have both Paul and the chief talk about
Yeah.
that.
All right.
And could I want to point out here that the actual raises for police officers will be part of a collective bargaining negotiation. So we are not doing that, and but there has to be money to negotiate with. But, so I just want to point that out, that we're not stepping here and saying this rank is going to get this much and this rank is going to get, that is for, the union negotiation to work out. I know you all know that,
Chairman.
but just as a reminder.
Yeah, before the mayor leaves the podium, could we get a little bit of clarity about the circuit attorney's office? Because when we talk about her current organization table, that table was changed, and the number of employees was changed right before she took office. And so that office was operating at a higher level with more staff, and it was changed. And so when she got there, that's what she was left with. And she knows, and she prepared and understood and did the analysis to know that she needs more people. And so we need to have that clarity put there. And I
Sure.
hope at some point we could have her before us.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll ask her, both on 60 and 58, we'll ask her, we're going to do all the hearing and testimony today, and then anything else that we need to accommodate each of you with, but we'll ask her to come in next week.
That would be great, thank you.
Okay.
And just to your point, Paul Payne does have a schedule about that, and if you need me to make some copies or us to make some copies, we will. Because we actually talked about this yesterday in the Ways and Means Committee meeting as well, so,
Good, thank you.
thank you.
Mayor, there's one more question. I am sorry.
No, that's
Alderman
fine.
Muhammad.
That's why I'm here.
How are you, Mayor?
I'm great. How are
So-
you?
Is this money based off a,
The mic.
is this money based off a limited budget, or is this a new source of money for these projected allocations?
This is a new source of money because this would be a new half-cent sales tax. If it's passed in November, this would just authorize that sales tax to go on the ballot. But I think that it is important to tell people who are going to vote for something what they're going to vote for, and that this money won't be used for something other than this. And so, yes, it's a new source of money. It's a recurring revenue stream because, you know, you can't give somebody a raise this year and then not have the money to pay them that same raise next year. So it's a recurring revenue stream at half-cent sales tax.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning. Okay.
Could you give us an idea of what we're trying to accomplish here with the monies?
What this really is about is, as you know, Prop P passed in St. Louis County. That's going to allow St. Louis County to pay their officers a higher salary. Some of them may be $10,000 more for our officers. So this will give us the ability to at least compete competitively with St. Louis County and try to retain and recruit officers to come to our department. I'm more concerned about the retention at this point, okay? I have a large percentage in my department are officers from 0 to 10 years. These are the officers who are going to be looking hard at what the county's going to be paying what the salary is. These are the officers who are young, have families, and they're the ones who are going to look at that very strongly and make decisions. And that's a large percentage of my force. Then they're going to get into the officers who have 20 years. At 20 years, you're eligible to collect your pension. And those officers at 20 years are going to take a look at that and realize I can leave and I can go take another job with somewhere in St. Louis County. And remember, the municipalities are going to benefit from this as well, not just St. Louis County. So that next group from 20 years to 23 years, somewhere in that area, I figure, that's experience. That's just experience that you can't get any other way. And when you lose that type of experience, it's very hard to replace. So this sales tax will give us that ability to compete with St. Louis County. We do have benefits that help us now. Our pension is what's keeping our officers. But the pay, of course, your pension's based upon your pay. And if we don't stay competitive, that's my biggest fear.
Okay, and do we have any information as to what the amount St. Louis County, right now it says, just this article that's in front of me, their average pay is $48,000, about $6,000 more than us. Do we know what the county is going to go up to?
I do not have the official from St. Louis County. There are some projections. Some people have passed out things from St. Louis County Police Officers Association. I believe that St. Louis County may even, in fact, the county police may even have a press conference today to speak more about where that money's going. But from what so I don't have an official word to give you from St. Louis County as what their actual pay increase will be.
All right, and is Paul here? I just wanted to ask him where you got that $8.2 million. Are you looking at what I'm looking at?
Sure. I can step you through that process. As the mayor had indicated, the estimate is about a $19.5 million from a half-cent sales tax. Now, if you take the circuit attorney's amount, which was a fixed $1.2 million off the top, the question then was, if you are trying to maintain parity between police and fire, how would the balance of those amounts be allocated? And in regular salaries, it would be $8.3 million. They have about 1,300 officers, and fire, as the mayor indicated, had about 587, something like that. And then there's also, I'm sorry, there's about 600 because there's also some dispatchers which also get on the pay matrix. And then you work those numbers down. Now, the benefit changes are a little bit different between police and fire, and I should point out that particularly pension is a high amount on the police side, and that's one thing that we, as I've mentioned before in many budget meetings before, that something that needs to be addressed on the pension side. But working down from what the salary allocations were and what the pension and benefit calculations were, this is the $12.8 million in total for police and $5.5 million for fire is just proportional based on maintaining pay parity.
All right, and so for that $8.2 million, we just passed out Board Bill number 1. My authorized strength, Chief, is what, 1,300? And I'm at how many police officers right now? Just roughly.
Well, we're short, I can tell you right now. Where you authorized 1,303 officers.
Okay.
We are at 1,192, so we are short 111 officers. Now, we do have 53 recruits in the police academy right now. But I want to highlight again, because I just looked at my notes. Officers with less than 10 years on the police department, 42% of the office of the department. 42%, less than 10 years on. So you can understand why this is such a huge concern. These are the officers who are going to be looking at these other higher paying salaries at a time when they're young, they have families, and they're going to be looking hard at this. So 42% of our of our department have less than 10 years on.
And how long does it take, like, to start a class and get the class to graduation?
It's 1,240 hours, so 28 to 30 weeks, depending upon holidays, et cetera, et cetera. We have 2 classes in the academy right now. Okay, and the class will graduate in August, and we will be starting a class. A class will graduate in August 21st, Thursday, and we will start another class on that following Monday. My goal is to try to have 3 classes going at a time, because we start a class 35 to 40, depending upon the number of applicants. We're going to lose a few, but in order to try to get up, 2 classes a year is not going to ever get us up to where we need to be. So my goal is to try to get 3 classes at a time going in the police academy, so we can start trying to make that dent in getting back up to just our authorized strength.
Thank you. And then, Paul, let's go back to my numbers, and I know that we have the finance director for the police department here. That $8.2 million, what does that actually give me, let's say, average to a patrolman over what they would be receiving today?
Well, if that's how, obviously that's going to be negotiated, but if you want to just do simple
Just
math.
give me simple math.
You're about 6,300 or something like that per.
Right, so we would be at about 6,300 in St. Louis County. That would just get us to where St. Louis County is today per this sheet, let alone where they'll be tomorrow. Okay, I just wanted to understand that from that perspective. I appreciate it. And are there any other questions regarding the allocation of the funds? Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you, Interim Chief. My first question, I'm still trying to analyze all of this. The Prop P, what are we doing with those dollars?
The Prop P, St. Louis County's Prop P?
No, and I might be saying it wrong, we had passed a proposition, and they said they were sitting on that money. So what are we doing with that money?
I think that's for Mr. Payne or Mr. O'Connell.
Sure. The estimate, that was the use tax increase from this past April.
Oh,
Okay.
Proposition 2.
Right,
Well,
okay, because I was like, I might be saying it wrong, but I know it was a proposition.
Yeah, the estimated amount in the current fiscal year, this coming fiscal year, FY18, was $2.3 million.
Okay.
That remains unallocated in the budget right now.
We don't have it yet.
Okay, so they don't have it yet, but we can't allocate any of that toward these departments?
Well, eventually it will need to be appropriated, and we won't be receiving it until sometime in December.
Right.
But we will need to appropriate it, and we'll go through the normal budget appropriation process through E&A as well as the board through Ways and Means.
Okay. Then my other question was, and I heard the interim chief, and they were saying that they have 53 recruits, and they're short 111 officers. And so, I guess my question is, I heard him say retention was the #1 priority, and I appreciate that. But what incentives and what recruiting process do we have in place to bring those people in?
We attend all the recruiting fairs at the colleges, we're recruiting out in the neighborhoods. We just have a new recruiting vehicle that we put out in different areas. We have 2 sergeants assigned to recruiting, so we're doing everything we can to recruit. But as I say that, so is every other police department in the country, that they are also out heavily recruiting, because it's not, the last several years has been very difficult on law enforcement, so everyone is suffering the same issues trying to recruit. So everybody's out recruiting, so we are giving it our best efforts, and that's why, again, this would help us be competitive.
Okay, so the incentives, I know we can't use dollars because St. Louis County is already, 11,000 ahead of us. So what other incentives could we offer to bring policemen to us that maybe St. Louis County doesn't offer?
We offer the same types of incentives. What we have going for us more than anything is there isn't anywhere around here where they're going to get the experience that they're going to get in St. Louis City. There's no other department around that's going to offer the types of training and the types of advancement to specialized units, that we have many specialized units within the department that no other department offers. So officers here have different opportunities if they want to specialize in domestic crimes or arson, or sex crimes. We have all, the laboratory, the evidence, the academy. So there's a lot of opportunities here that officers can take advantage of to seek out those specialized assignments, whereas other departments don't have those type of opportunities.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Payne can help me with a little bit, some of the detail of what we offer. When I was young, I didn't think about the benefits that I needed when I get to 65, but.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, I appreciate that. But we have a pension, it's a defined benefit plan. It's based on 50% after you get to 20 years, 50% if you're too.
Our pension is, at 20 years, you can get 40% of your pay.
Okay.
At 25 years, 50%. At 30 years, it's 70%, and after 30 years, it's 75%. So we have good, in that regard, we have good benefits where pension, and that's really what helps retain our officers now, is our pension. If we didn't have our pension, we would really have a very difficult time retaining officers and recruiting applicants.
Okay.
So it's something that definitely helps us, but again, your pension's based upon your pay. And if you don't have a pay that is competitive, then
The pension,
exactly.
right, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Very quickly.
Mr. Chairman,
Let's see, I'm going to get Alderwoman Davis, and then we'll
thank
have
you,
you.
sir.
Alderwoman Davis.
Right.
Oh, I'll yield to the alderman for the floor.
Alderman Moore.
What if the county, the St. Louis City Alderman decided that we didn't want to stay and we was going to move to the county and run for election? What would that be like? With the threat that these guys are holding over your head about, would you be willing to limit amount of time to serve as a St. Louis police officer with the training that we give them?
I don't know if I understand your question.
what if we decided to do what the police was doing? We decided to quit because our salaries are very low compared to the county salaries, so.
Well, I think you see that now, though, Alderman, okay? Our pay already is less than what's going on in St. Louis County in these municipalities. It's already less. The officers who are here today, they like St. Louis. They like the St. Louis Police Department, and they like working here.
They don't like the money.
Well, like anybody, they have mortgages to pay and tuitions and all those things that come along with that. And they want to be paid competitively. It is, it's a dangerous job in working here. And
If they're scared, they need to go to church.
they do, every Sunday, sometimes every day. I told an officer last night in the ER he needed to stop by church because he got shot.
Get more prayer in. But what if the fire department and the medics see that you guys are getting more money than them? What if they decide to do the same thing? We
But
would
they
have
get
anarchy.
parity.
I'm speaking to the chief, Mr. Chairman.
If the fire department, if they decided to leave,
Because they feel like the money that we're giving you guys is unfair to them, giving you more money than them, instead of giving them $12 million, and give both of you $12 million to
everybody, including yourselves, have to make life decisions. And that's what you're going to see. People are going to make life decisions based upon their pay, and people make that decision not only in law enforcement, but in private industry every day. And if that's the decision you want to make, then that's the decision that we'll live with. Remember, 42% of our department are at that age where they will make that decision.
And,
You are not chief yet, and they're going to make you chief. You said you would have 3 classes of students. What if you don't make chief? Would you keep pushing that in Senate?
In order to try to get up to where we need to be at 1,300, if you only do 2 classes a year of 30 recruits, you're never going to get there. So the only way to try to get up to that is to try to do 3 classes. If I could do 4 classes a year, that would even increase my ability to get up there. But when people are also resigning and retiring every month as well. So right now we're just staying always at about 90 to 100 officers short. So we have to increase our academy classes in order to try to make a dent in that and bring us up.
Public safety to me is vacant lots, weeds going out of the sidewalk, unkept streets, empty buildings, shootings consistently, everybody's running the red light and the stop signs. To me, this is a very unfair ordinance. It doesn't distribute the money like it should be. It looks like you guys are getting the fat of the cow. And I think it's a very unfair ordinance that it is not distributed properly because it's not solving any of my problems in the hood. You know, I've talked to you on several occasions about the super hot spots, according to Sam Dotson. He call them hot spots, I call them trouble areas, that we need to rid the community of. These guys got licenses to sell drugs, they have license to commit crime, and it doesn't seem that anything is happening. They keep increasing. We move them from one spot to the next like wildebeest. So I think that we need to take this and break it down a little more, maybe give you $8 million and get a fire department 8 and try to get some more money to help out with the other crime elements that we have in the city.
right, and here on table 2 on that second page, it has what the mayor's intention is.
Mr. Chairman, I
And-
do not need to be babysitted. I ask the
I'm not-
questions the way I want to ask them, so please, I'm
Right.
finished with my questions.
Okay,
but
thank you.
Don't make any comments on my questions.
And then we do need, the evident light, next week, we will need our recreation director to come in to give me an idea of what we can do from a recreation standpoint. Just make sure on my list here, Alderman, I know you're ready. Alderman Vaccaro, any questions? No. Alderwoman Murphy? No. I'm going to say Alderman Boyd. We have an Alderman Boyd down here, too. Alderwoman Boyd.
No.
Okay, Alderman Muhammad.
Mr. Chairman, I yield to the Alderwoman from the 19th Ward who asked to go first.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, I forgot, we jumped past you.
we did.
Oh, we don't have a problem. Hi,
Morning.
I shall address you as Lieutenant Colonel. We might be addressing you as Chief soon. One of the things I have to say to you is that I respect you a lot. In this moment that we are experiencing in the city of St. Louis, I'm kind of happy that you're in the leadership role. We've been through a lot in this city. We've been through these times before, and you were there, and you know what to do. So I'm looking forward to working with you. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough is, and we're talking about money today, and to put a little bit of clarity, the fire department does have parity pay. So when we are addressing the police, we are also addressing the fire department at the same time. But when you look at this article and it says St. Louis County will probably boost the starting pay for a police officer to $52,366. We still have a large gap, even if we attain what we're seeking today. Maryland Heights says that their starting salary could be $57,108. This is serious. You and I know that a lot of our police officers who have recently retired, those who are about to retire, have been on the force 15, 20, 25 years and never pulled their gun. It was a different time, it was a different culture in our city, and that's a part of what we'll have to change as well. Getting our police officers to stay that length of time again, up to the 30 years, is critical in the retention process. And so we have to put many things in place. And I'm saying this now because I know who's sitting in this room. We have a lot of sharp minds in the room today. We have a lot of people who provide various services in the room today, and they have conversations with a lot of people that can help us. So back in the day, when we encouraged landlords to give reduced rent to our police officers, when we encouraged certain discounts for our police officers, whether it was Dobbs tires or whatever, we got to get back to that because this is a critical part of how we can make our city better. So you see, the thinking has to be above and beyond the dollars on the budget page. And that's what I know you know how to do. And I hope that you're putting those things on the table for us to help get it in place. This is a critical thing that needs to be done. It's just a small effort to get to where we need to be. And that part of this today's business, I can support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. You're back?
I'm back.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm just
Chairman.
saying I can support.
I'm still with you.
That's a good thing. How's it going, Chief?
It's been a lot of work,
I
but
can
it's going
imagine.
good, because we have good, hardworking officers out there. It's good.
So, with this increase, is it going directly to salaries, or is it going to put more officers on the street?
No, this is going to the salaries. You know, we're budgeted for 1,300 officers. That's where we're trying to get back to. So this would include that for 1,300 officers, and we will continue to push more academy classes to get up to that number.
So it includes bringing on an additional 100 or so officers, because right now you're at 1,240 or somewhere around that number?
Right now, as I stand here today, we're 111 officers short. We have 53 in the police academy, okay? So you can take that off because they'll be graduating, and then, you know, so 58, whatever that number is, but the difference.
So basically, this is in direct response to Proposition P in St. Louis County.
Yes.
Well, I think it's important to pay police officers and anyone who's in law enforcement the way they should be paid and getting them the amount they should. I think it takes a special person to be a cop in St. Louis City with the current pay scale. I mean, if you truly want to fight crime and serve the community, then St. Louis City is the only place to be. no crimes are taking place in St. Louis County at the rate that's taking place here in the city, especially in my ward particularly. So now the question becomes, do we want the top cop out of the academy, or do we truly want officers who are dedicated to the city of St. Louis? And with this pay increase, what type of officers will we attract?
Well, we're going to be competitive. I mean, you bring up a good point that I said earlier, that the officers who work here, they want to work here. They're dedicated or committed to the city. And that's really, I mean, that's to them. But at the same time, we have to be competitive. And when you're looking at the numbers that I'm talking about, specifically this less than 10 years on, 42%, that's when you look at the pay differences, that's a huge concern. And you know, I don't want to be here next year standing here saying we're even further than 111 officers short. So really, it's going to help us just to try to stay competitive is what we're getting at, and try to get back up to that 1,300 mark.
So hiring more officers and hopefully hiring the best qualified officers.
Yes, I mean, you know, we have a stringent background investigation and trying always to get the best officers and keeping them here.
So that's what I'm concerned with, putting more officers on the streets, which means the more officers we have, the more people that get locked up. And right now in the city, as even our Commissioner of Corrections has said, we have a mass incarceration problem. And we have people sitting in a workhouse and justice center for nonviolent crimes because we don't have adequate services in the circuit attorney's office. So right now, we're just locking people up, and we don't need to be. I mean, half the people that sit in the justice center right now, half of them need clinical services. The other half need Jesus Christ. But if we put more officers on the street, what does that look like for the 21st Ward? What does it look like for North St. Louis? What's going to be the response? Because right now the response is we have officers who are not truly serving the community. And that's not a reflection of your leadership. That's the previous leadership, which I am glad he's gone. And I hope you become chief. That's a wink to the mayor. But what does that look like?
I've said, and we have planning sessions going on, my idea is to get officers out into the neighborhoods where we're good at, we know who the bad people are. We know, because we're good at that. We don't know who the good people are. The good people are the ones who serve on our juries. The good people are the ones who give us the information we need. But it's all of us working together. And so that's my goal, is to get more officers out into the neighborhoods to get to know the good people and to work together. You know, one thing that officers like to see that we don't see is we don't see other agencies wanting to work with us. And so we're trying to get other agencies to come to the table. We, the police, we cannot do this alone. And I will continue to say that. Mental health, social services, you talk about anybody who's had one class in sociology will talk about the root causes of crime. And in our challenged neighborhoods, every ingredient of root causes of crime is there. And when you put all those ingredients together, this is what you get. So the police are, you know, we're there. You know, we're law enforcement. Law enforcement. If people obey the law, you don't need us. So, but that's where everybody has to come together. The schools, when the children are young, and everybody work together, and that's how you combat these type of issues. And so I agree that, hey, the answer is not continually throwing people in jail. You got to get there much earlier than that.
So, I guess this question would be for either Mr. Payne or you, Mr. O'Connell. With these allocations, will they already be earmarked to what they can be used for, or is it going to be used at the chief's discretion, or who's ever over these various departments? Or will they be earmarked
When you
already?
talk about all the different uses that are outlined in those tables, that will be part of the regular appropriations process. So it's not the chief's call, it's our call together, the mayor's office and the Board of Aldermen.
But the chief will have great influence.
Well, certainly, he's at the table as far as the full law enforcement picture, as
And
will
right
be the
now-
circuit attorney.
And right now, we don't have a clear answer on who the chief of police will be.
Well, we have an acting chief, and the mayor stands behind him.
Okay.
But yeah, we are in the process of finding who the next chief was. To your point about, is it just officers? And, you know, the chief's spoken to that. We believe that the plan we have in front of you for the uses is a holistic approach. It addresses, I think, some of the concerns you have, that it's not just merely officers. It's social services, it's mental health, it's these other things that are listed on that table that the mayor believes and our office believes need to be part of the picture. You know, I mean, we could have presented you with a use that is just police and fire. The mayor doesn't believe that is she agrees that that is not the full answer. We've got to provide these other services along the way.
Thank you. Chief, you're doing a hell of a job.
I thank you for coming in. Oh, I'm sorry. Oop, I've got an Irishman down here on the end of the table that would like to ask a question. Alderman Ornowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just got here a little late, but I think all the aldermen here agree, you know, the problems, and I hear every alderman say one of the first things we have to do is hire more police, which is correct. I ride everywhere in St. Louis. I see a lot of things. I ride with special crews and things like this. Our average veteran officers today now are about 9 years on the police department, if you figure it out. You have people coming out of the academy looking to go somewhere else because of the better pay. The officers here, they just want to be competitive. If they can get close to St. Louis County, you know, they're happy, they'll stay. I mean, the ones that are staying are very dedicated to the city. There's no doubt we do need to place people who have mental issues in the right place so they can get help and everything else. But, you know, we do have to find programs for kids and start steering them in the right direction. So I think the consensus is we all agree with one thing, you know, police are paid to enforce the law. And when you talk about municipalities who do money grabs, I've seen when police pull cars over for expired plates from 6 months ago, or they might have a bench warrant, they're not going to get locked up. Just cooperate for 10 minutes. They'll tell you to go take care of it because it takes them off the street for an hour and a half to lock somebody up for a minor warrant. The highway patrol is going to be coming in for the highways. And I'm sure a lot of people drive the highways nowadays. And I mean, it's terrible out there. So, you know, what's the answer? We don't want police chasing cars.
Alderman.
Yes. But anyway.
We're asking questions here.
Anyway, and so, Chief, I guess this is to you. I think we're all in agreement. You know, the officers just want to be paid competitively and get up close to somewhere else the size of everywhere else. And, you know, I don't know the actual count of police officers on the street, but I'm hoping once if we get everything worked out, maybe we can move back to maybe putting back a mobile reserve unit, which I think for years they've done great jobs, and maybe some other things like, you know, vice squads and gang units. So I think that's very important to the city, but I appreciate your time. I just wanted to say that a lot of people don't see what goes on the streets unless they're actually out there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for coming out today. We are, I know that the Chief of Staff is here. We would like to see next week when we schedule Circuit Attorney's Office. I would like to get an idea of what these programs entail besides just the policing portion of it. And then I know by next week, Chief, you'll know what hurdles you have to overcome with, I guess, with what St. Louis County releases.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you, and we will see you next week. Because we're not going to actually vote on either of these bills today until we get all of the information and we hear out the issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be safe. Okay. Just bear with me, everybody, for a second. Yes. Okay. All right, just recognize the
I would recognize Alderman Conway on Board Bill 58. Alderman?
Good morning, members, and I just figured I'd come over here for a few moments, kind of give us the idea. Obviously, we understand we did the budget today. If I don't get the refuse bill and add the $3 a month to our monthly fees, will be another $600,000 there. We continue to be pressed economically here in the city of St. Louis. Our expenses are expanding faster than our revenues. I visited with the new mayor and the old mayor that we have to grow our revenue sources, and that is bring more people into the city of St. Louis. Right now, here in the region, we have among some of the highest tax rates. The sales tax rates, our real estate rate is at 8.3% on your assessed value today. We have ever-increasing taxes, and the number of people I have that are paying it right at this point in time has leveled off, but has continued over the last couple of decades to decrease. Throughout this country, there are other cities that have entered into what they call payments in lieu of taxes with the not-for-profit organizations in their community, because the public safety services, street services, park services, all of the things that we provide as a city benefit these institutions. And they've realized that they are a big part of the expenditures. When you look at the value, and I visited with the assessor, and I said that I have $14 billion in taxable real estate. And we have, part of the problem is to come up with the true number, and we can work a little bit harder, is since the property is exempt on the not-for-profits, they don't appraise them because it's meaningless. We don't get any funding out of that. But the historical number we know is at $1.5 billion, but the property could be 50 years old or 10 years old or whatever the case might be. But the conservative number, very conservative, is $3 billion, which puts that from a perspective to each of you that, 22, 23% of the real estate, and some of the most valuable real estate in the city of St. Louis, is not burden of any tax. And the $3 billion of commercial property here in the city of St. Louis would generate about $88 million in real estate taxes if it was online. Now, when you look at Boston, which has been studied and restudied in a lot of different ways, and other cities have done it, the not-for-profit institutions realize the benefits of the success of the underlying municipalities to continue their missions, to provide whatever services that they're providing, that their illuminatory purpose might deem them to do, service the Humane Society, service the dogs, the hospitals, education, whatever. If I can't protect their employees, I can't protect the visitors, the students, the users of their campuses, what they have to offer is meaningless and will continue to be meaningless. They're a part of this city, and if they represent 20% of the economic land activity, and my general revenue budget is we just finished it today, $32 million was the final number. the responsibility, if we equated it to real estate, would be over $100 million. That sure would help us out, and that's not what we're asking for today. A couple of things that we are asking for today is to make sure that all of the institutions, and I know that they're represented behind me today, understand what our circumstances are here in the city of St. Louis, the benefits that we provide. And one of the things is, years ago, when they did do the payroll tax, which is 1/2 of 1%, when they did that payroll tax, that was part of fixing a lot of old taxes 20, 30 years ago when they did that. They exempted the exempt organizations. Okay, that at that point in time, that was their perspective. We had more population. The needs might not have been as great. I don't know what, I was not here 30 years ago, thank God. But I don't know all of the reasoning for that exemption. But everybody else, every other organization that employs someone in the city of St. Louis pays that 0.5%. And it is 1/2 of 1%. So if I pay my executive director $100,000 at one of my organizations, payroll tax is $500. Now, to put that in perspective, I pay someone $100,000 and the payroll tax is $500. And what we've seen over time, more and more of the not-for-profits, you know, have, just as a general strategy in the last 2 or 3 decades, are in the old days, they just kind of ran and lost money. But they realize that they have missions and people to serve and issues to serve. They realize they just can't run themselves like that anymore, but they have to run themselves so they can maximize the services that they can provide to the community or whatever their mission might be here in the region. And what we're asking with this is, when we look at the funding and how we're going to go forward, what we're asking in both of these bills, because I don't know which will pass, and in both cases, Board Bill 50 and 58 and 60 go to the ballot. So whatever we do this week and next week, all we are doing as aldermen is putting it on the ballot and letting the residents say. Now, we have some other objectives here. I have to let, and I know that the police officers have left the room. St. Louis County on Proposition P releases in the next day or two. Our police officers, even our firefighters, I know the fire chief has left. If you looked at what some of the firefighters get in some of the districts in St. Louis County, it's pretty incredibly high. But if we don't put a chart that is steadfast, that offers certainty, that we are reacting, not necessarily to what St. Louis County, because we've always known we've had this issue, and we've just continued here in the city of St. Louis every year. Sam's been around for a long time, Marlene now a long time. Kick the can down the road. We put the Band-Aids like we did this morning on the budget, and we moved down. So we have to identify additional sources, but we have to let the men and women of our police department know this week or next week that with some certainty we will be providing the funding to keep their pay competitive. Because we have a lag time here, because if we pass this in July, it will be on the November ballot. And that's what we're looking at between both of these. Mr. Vice Chairman, I'm open to any questions.
So, actually, does anyone have a question of the sponsor? Okay, Alderwoman Boyd?
Thank you, Mr. Alderman Conway. Being a previous director of a non-for-profit organization, and I heard you loud and clear saying that some of the directors are making 3 figures, but I don't think people realize how they come to those 3 figures. When you're a director or executive director of those organizations, you have to raise your own dollars. And so those organizations rely totally on whatever grants are out there or whatever fundraisers that organization can provide. And so in the times that we're in right now, social service is the main piece that's being cut, and that's the main area that is needed, especially in the North St. Louis area. And so I really feel strongly that if we put this to our voters, again, the voters are the ones that's gonna be the ones that's gonna be attacked, because if this passes, a lot of these organizations, they might not close the doors, but they're gonna cut those services so drastically. And again, we're gonna lose. And it's not just about North St. Louis, it's about the low and middle income people that's gonna be impacted. And so when you have the mental institution that has been closed down, and I heard the interim chief loud and clear, a lot of things are social service issues that the police shouldn't even be addressing. So that's why I was asking the question, how do you think that the social service will be impacted for these non-for-profits? Their services within itself, I mean.
Right, so if I put it in, I'm going to put it in two different perspectives. I have an exemption for not-for-profits of less than 20 employees in that bill. We were considering a number of less than 50. And remember that 0.5% is 1/200th of what you're paying that employee. When they look at the other benefits that they offer, it is a little hard for me to comprehend that if I offer them health insurance, 401k match, and things like that, anybody does a 457, 403b, any of those things are doing matches at a rate considerably higher than what all other organizations are paying here in the city of St. Louis, is 0.5%. The key thing is with these institutions and not-for-profits, if I can't provide protection for their employees, when people show up at the hospital and they can't make it to the emergency room door, hospitals don't go out and get them. Did you know that? They call the fire department carries it in the last, and it happens all the time. We provide a lot of support services. All of these not-for-profits, if they're 20 stories high, my fire department is prepared to go 20 stories high. If it's a university, my fire department and my police department have already set up plans to address different catastrophes. God forbid they happen. We have the public safety in place to protect these institutions. If I can't protect them, they won't exist. And they have to understand that they're part of our society, and we do appreciate, truly, the input that they give us. But we're just asking to put them on par with at least one of the taxes that we're collecting from other organizations. That's what we're asking. The voters will would have the right to decide that. We could ask the people in the 27th Ward, do they want to pay another 0.5% sales tax for police? Or we do another real estate tax? But what I'm saying is, look at what the other cities have done, especially people that are in similar sizes and age to us. Is we're all in this together. The success of the city is the success of these institutions and their missions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Your question? Sure, absolutely.
Alderman Conway, are you aware if there have been any conversations with any group of nonprofits prior to this bill being proposed to get some understanding and/or opportunity for when this would be proposed, if it was going to be proposed, or if there were some other kinds of ways for some supplemental support to the city?
Being down here, the institutions behind me represent a significant fabric of our community. And that's why we're where we are today. We all know what they contribute to our community. Heretofore, we brought this up about 8 years ago, and My good friend Father Biondi did not like that, which was no big deal to me. I like Father Biondi, and I'm an alumni there. We have to stand up and address these issues. Now, what the Deputy Collector of Revenue said, this would raise about $12 million, which would actually meet our immediate policing need, because if the voters don't go for another half-cent sales tax, I still have to meet these needs of the men and women on our police department. This will also give the new administration, and I would hope that Mayor Cruzen, and she has demonstrated that she has a broader perspective of what we have to do to address the long-term sustainability of the city of St. Louis. And that is part of the solution. $12 million in payroll tax is less than a fourth of what they would pay if they were in Boston. So, we are not overreaching by any means, but this is definitely the opportunity for the institutions sitting behind me, and some of them aren't here today, purposefully not here today, and we represent, but we're not at arm's length of each other, though they may feel that today. The sustaining the city of St. Louis and what we have to offer, they're part of the solution.
Mr. Chairman, I shall assume, since you didn't answer my question, that the answer is no. Thank you. Thank you on that one.
All right.
Okay, so the answer is no. So I meant to start off by apologizing to all that are in the room. We do not consider you and your thoughts or positions as meaningless on behalf of the city of St. Louis. My next question to you is, do you know whether or not any analysis was done before this decision was made on how many of the entities have the opportunity to put their headquarters somewhere else other than the city of St. Louis because they own facilities in other parts of the region, and we could very well lose a whole lot more other than what we're seeking, people moving their homes and a number of other things. Do you know whether or not that analysis was done?
The answer is, it's the same analysis we do when we raise the business employment taxes. None.
So none was done, thank you. Okay, my next question is, and I started off and that question was answered, but I'm gonna have to ask that same question again. Did we at least take the opportunity to talk with the service organizations that have over 100 years of service to this community? Just those, even if I don't go to the other ones, just those who have more than 100 years of service to this community.
And I haven't called them. They have no reason to talk to me. That's why we're having this hearing. They've signed up today. I've made it clear to them that everyone will get to testify, and we're not going to pass this out today, that we're going to come back on both of these bills.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to put you on.
Oh, feel free. Everybody else
yeah.
behind me has.
No, I always clarify anything I say, because when we put our name on a bill, and most especially when it's so involved, I make assumptions that you have had in-depth conversation with the mayor's office, and some kinds of other analysis have been done before this document was printed and read. So that's why I'm asking these questions, because you might have some information that I don't have, that I would not have been privy to. One of the other things I was wondering, and you may not know this either, was there any opportunity or is there any documentation when this analysis was made to do this, if there was any kind of value that could be brought to this community from the various organizations that this additional tax would go to, that could either help change the culture, the mindset, services, and better quality of life for the city of St. Louis on a different and higher level. And I'm not just talking about education or providing a meal or, I mean, there's a whole lot of other things, and you heard our police chief talk about it, and we've experienced this in the past before. I mean, we're talking about character building, we're talking about family dynamics, and a lot of these agencies can help us do these things. There's monetary value here, and I was just wondering if any of that analysis had been done, or if you have any knowledge of any of that.
All right, the most studied pilot was Boston, and when they had done these, and we do know, and I am comfortable that all of the organizations here today mean well, just like our police. You know, our police, they want to be here. They want to be here. They have a mission. They have a service. We are probably getting them, as Mike March used to say, at max Q, you know, at operating at some pretty good efficiencies. And so if there is more to do with them, I know as probably where we've been most holistic here is the city is trying to organize all of our homeless providers and mental health providers over the years and organize that. And there may be other ways to do that. We do have a new mayor and a new perspective, and, you know, we hope to build on that.
And I guess that's my next question is, I'm hoping that we do have an opportunity to discuss this at length, and I think that I hope we have an opportunity to really do some true analysis. And I'm speaking for myself, and even though Alderman Roddy and a couple others are not here, I know the monetary value that we're bringing to the city of St. Louis. If I just look at the 4 projects that are in progress right now, and I'm bringing in close to about 400 new employees with average salaries at $75,000 and above, they're going to be buying homes, cars, and everything else. The added value to the city of St. Louis is going to be increasing rapidly, and we're looking forward to that. But I also know that some of these companies, based on the conversations we had to move them here, when they, and 2 have already called me, when they see that we are taking actions like this, they're questioning their decision based on this. And so I'm hoping we can have an in-depth conversation to really look at all of the financial analysis of the city for the future. You know, the way you run a business is that you forecast your expected income based on a number of other levels of things, and you don't do quick one-time shot pot kind of things that really don't bring you a whole lot for the permanent long haul. So I'm just a little concerned, and I'm hoping that no one is trying to put this on a November ballot, because we have an election in 2018, and that if we ever got to a ballot initiative, that's soon enough.
Well, now on fast tracking, you know, my obligation here is given what's going on in St. Louis County, and what I've got to match. My target date is to get one or both of these out, and so that it can be on the ballot. That somebody else's obligation to sell these to the public. That's not my job. My job is to make sure that they get heard, and that's my job. I'll put my little 2 cents in, but along the way.
Can I bring a little clarity to that as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
He's chairing the meeting, not me.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay. So, and we talk about these 111 positions. When I was talking to the guys last week, it was at 107. But we must remember that we already have in our budget the allocations for these 100 positions. This is not any new money that we need. So I want to give clarity to the public. I don't like giving fear factor stuff to make something happen. That money is in the budget. So if we can fill those positions are there.
Right.
That's taken care of.
Right.
But the notion of an additional 24 police officers that the police association or anybody else did not ask us for, I'm not dealing with that today. I just heard the police chief say, I need to retain and fill. And when we retain and fill, that does not require new money. Is that not true?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, that is true. But
Theory? Fact?
in practice here at City Hall, sometimes, you know, the jobs don't get filled, then there's additional funds left in that budget, just as it is here at the Board of Aldermen's budget. But, you know, we hold them to a pretty high standard, but just to be clear.
And we didn't cut that out the budget.
No, I
We didn't
realize
cut those
that.
100 positions out the budget.
So, to keep it moving along,
Do not cut me off until I say I am done. Thank you.
um,
And just
So-
give me a moment, please.
But we-
Just
if
give
we're
me one
keeping-
more moment, please. And so I just need to clear up, you know, our public really needs to understand things very clearly. You know, I just had 2 neighborhood meetings this week, and they were confused. So we did not cut those positions out of the budget that are not filled.
The police department are the 50 jobs that we lost. When Paul came up, originally we were losing 53 in the budget. We are, in theory, saying we did not cut, and those jobs are supposed to be filled at the police department. The other 53 employees here at City Hall have been eliminated, or at least 50.
That is different. The police budget
Right,
stayed the
okay.
same. That is, I'm
You are correct.
I'm done, thank you.
Okay.
so if there's no other question, well, actually, we do, and then I'm gonna also make a statement, but, so Alderman Moore, you have seniority.
What will you, if you hold these bills, especially number 58, what will you do different than you've done so far?
Can I answer that?
No.
We will, I am waiting to hear the speakers. You know, I mean, that's why we're having a public meeting. I want to hear what they might say. It's an education. I think today, for them, was a little bit of an eye-opener, all the people behind me. They didn't understand the detail and the complexity of what we're trying to deal with to provide for the safety of our residents and for the people that either use their facilities, work at their facilities, or maintain their facilities. So I think it is important, and it wasn't a fluke that we're all here on all 4 of these issues today.
You don't feel you have enough in there for us to
We'll be
vote
here
today?
till 2 o'clock.
We have to let people speak.
I have made a commitment that we would listen to the testimony and digest it, and then we will not vote on anything until next week, on either bill.
And just as, we can make amendments to these, so that's something that we can work on as we hear the testimony. So there'll be changes to the bill. Alderman Moore, are you done, or?
I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. And then Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. So, Board Bill 58 would harmfully impact non-for-profits that do exactly what the City of St. Louis doesn't do, and that's serve black communities.
That's a leading question, Alderman. I would say that if you look at the budget and you sat on this committee, and you look at where our funding went, that would not be a correct statement.
I think so. When you look at the physical conditions of my community and surrounding communities, that being North City, St. Louis, it doesn't look anything like the Shaw neighborhood.
And from a physical viewpoint, that is, but if you look at where the dollars are being spent in our budget, that wouldn't be a truthful statement.
So you're telling me what's on paper, and I'm telling you what's in reality.
You're looking at a physical thing, making a conclusion premised on that. I would totally disagree. You have the right to your opinion, and I have the right to my opinion.
The fact is, so your bill will harmfully impact organizations like the Urban League, Habitat for Humanity, the Gateway Region YMCA, organizations that do exactly what we need in underserved and underprivileged communities. And if we are imposing a half-cent sales tax that would negatively impact our budget anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 on an annual basis, which means that decreased the quality of programming they can do in neighborhoods. They're increasing the amount of community services they do in neighborhoods, and that would impact my neighborhood and neighborhoods that other aldermen don't have the privilege of serving.
Well, I have the privilege of serving my community, and just to
Yeah,
put
the-
things in perspective,
The privilege of serving
29%
a
of the
white,
people in the
wealthy
Shaw...
community,
Let-
But
a white,
Alderman-
wealthy community
Let him answer the question.
that is privileged, that has adequate police services, that doesn't have problems with illegal dumping, that does not have 1,966 LOA properties, that does not have 700 vacant lots. You can't compare your neighborhood to mine. I'm just telling you that.
Let him answer the question.
Alderman,
Mohammed,
at the
please.
Shaw neighborhood, 29% of the residents live at poverty or below. When I became alderman there in the 8th Ward 27 years ago, it was one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis. And over 25 years, we worked to get those vacant lots moved, get the property out of the LRA hands. It took a lot of hard work over the years. And still today, it is a diverse community, economically, racially, religiously.
Any other questions? Okay, so I was just going to make just a brief statement, and then we'll start bringing speakers up. And although I have not decided which way I'm voting on this, it seems that a lot of the questions were brought up. I think that when we did the minimum wage, I think the businesses all were in here almost in the same position that you all are in, saying, gee, we're going to leave the city, we're going to do all these things. I opposed it. It passed. So I'm just saying, we're here to listen. I would ask that as the speakers come up, you say who you represent and whether or not you live in the city. Because, one of the things that we have to do, and again, don't take this as an indication I'm not supporting this, but what we hear, at least what I hear, and I believe all the other aldermen hear, is we're not getting what we feel are police services. People are leaving the city because they don't feel like it, that they get the kind of services. That's why I would ask you, state, if you live in the city, because a lot of people choose to live in the county because they say, well, the city's not safe. And it's our job to figure out and do a lot of very unpopular things. I got a call from, Concept Schools or Gateway Science Academy, which I was very much a part of starting, and they're encouraging me to vote against it, as well as all the other calls that I got. I also have to listen to constituents that are telling me, Joe, we're leaving the city. And in my neighborhood, they're leaving the city. And so I'm just saying, although I'm having an open mind, I would ask as you come up that you would state who you represent, whether or not you choose to live in our city or if you choose to live in the county. And we have our chairman back.
All right. We have a list of a lot of speakers. And what I would ask is if you could keep your comments to about 2 minutes or less, or if someone has already addressed the issues that you wanted to address in your comments, you can add that and just say, I echo what the alderman from the 23rd Ward, or, the previous speaker. I guess the first speaker is someone I know, Darrell Jones the second. Darrell was a resident of the Shaw neighborhood and went to the same grade school that I went to. Wow. Now think about that. I've been around for a while. And Mr. Jones, if you would just tell us if you're representing a group today and whether or not you're a resident of the city, I guess, as the alderman said.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Again, my name is Darrell Jones II. I am the Director of Community Engagement and Partnerships for the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis, so that's who I'm representing this morning. I was a longtime resident of the city of St. Louis. Understand, I get where you're coming from, Alderman Vaccaro, but understand the only reason I don't live in the city at this point is not because of safety, but because it's more bang for the buck. So
We'd love to have you back.
Oh, trust me,
plenty of
trust me.
housing.
My girlfriend and I are looking for a house right now. So understand that's where we are. I attend church in the North City, and I, like I said, grew up on the South Side in Ward 8. So again, first let me thank you for allowing me to speak with you this morning in regards to this Board Bill 58 here. Nonprofit organizations right now are, we're facing some trying times. Each day the pool of funding that, that we use to service this community is dwindling. I mean, and the demands of our residents are increasing every day, right? I mean, remember at the end of the day, we are not all social enterprises. We're not all corporations. Our funding stream is very, very limited and is very, very direct. With looming pressures from the federal government, cuts at the state level, changing corporate climates, and with mergers and decreasing donations, it's becoming incredibly difficult to continue to stretch and spread the funds that we have at this moment. Understand that at the Urban League, we acknowledge the pressures that it is to create a safer city, and I believe all the nonprofits in here are doing that in some form or fashion, trying to help this city live up to the potential that we all know and believe that it has. But understand also that this tax will not do that. By extension of this tax that you're trying to put on us, the very people that we work hardest to help, so that's through workforce development programs, food pantries, clothing drives, and all of the other services that we provide will be hurt as well. Costs like these have major implications on nonprofit organizations, potentially affecting the growth and the expansion of some of these organizations, may have us scale back and decrease our numbers of who we're able to serve, how we're able to serve them, and again, even sacrificing, as mentioned before by Alderman Muhammad, the quality of some of our services. And understand that's something that we never want to skimp on, because that does nothing but continue to damage our community, and then we become the criminals that we're all trying to get out, right? So because of this interconnectivity, each one of us are going to be affected negatively by this. Specifically, the Urban League will end up feeling the effect of almost a loss of $25,000 annually. That's on the low end. So that's, again, something to think about. Not to mention the individuals that were mentioned before that go to those hospitals, that, of course, our fire department and police department takes to those hospitals. Who do you think is helping them pay for some of their bills? Nonprofit organizations here in the city. Translating this loss, though, for the Urban League would be the loss of a staff member or even the shutting down of a particular program. As community members and families and teammates of local elected officials, we're hoping that we can lean on you guys, and you guys would be our shield and protectors from everything that's coming down from Washington, D.C. and from Jeff City. Furthermore, Mr. Chair, I see he's not in here, or not here, but understand.
That would be me for the minute.
Yeah. Understand, it is very, very troubling to hear your feelings in regard to this subject. As mentioned, I grew up in the 8th Ward. Love the 8th Ward. But to have someone say that us nonprofit organizations are putting a burden on the city's resources, a burden, that's a very, very privileged statement to make.
I would have to say, I don't know if he's,
That's not.
I don't know if he's saying that you're a burden on it.
No, that was, excuse me, that was a direct quote. Excuse me, that was a direct quote.
Oh,
That was a
right,
direct quote.
But
Thank you.
But I believe what he meant is.
It doesn't matter
you
what he
use the
meant.
same-
Perception is reality, and that's how it was perceived, that you said that we were a burden on the city's services, or excuse me, the city's resources. And again, growing up in this city, like I said, that is a very, very privileged and disheartening statement to make. So as I close, I ask you, Mr. Chair and committee, think about the individuals in your wards, the services that they receive, the services that they require, the love that they need. And if public safety, community revitalization, and support for our youth is the goal and is what we value, then the acceptance of this bill contradicts all of that fundamental value. So I strongly urge you, do not support this bill.
I
Thank you.
just have two quick questions. One, I know in public safety, we do give money to the Urban League, and I think the Urban League does a great job.
I appreciate that.
How many employees do you have? Because right now, this bill, I believe, is 20 or under, and I think they're looking at possibly organizations with 50 or under, and keeping in mind that this bill is subject to a lot of change between now and next week. I'm just curious, how many employees does the Urban League have?
So we have over 225 employees that span over the region, but in the city, we're just about right there too with a $400,000. We're looking at $400,000. That's where we got our number of just about $25,000 annually at the very, very least.
So how many employees, I'm sorry,
So you're looking at
in the
close.
city?
In the city, you're looking at close to 70 to 80 employees.
So,
And that's also, we are still looking for employees because we have positions to fill because of the needs that are necessary.
So
So you could almost say we're like police force right now, where we're trying to fill these spots.
So if this bill got changed in a way that said, under 100 employees, you wouldn't be affected?
But see, that's what you're not understanding is that, as I mentioned before, it's the interconnectivity between all the nonprofit organizations that are here. So if one of them is affected, trust me, we'll be negatively affected as well. So that's what you have to start thinking about. We preach all this collaboration, and that we finally done it, and now you're going to take things that chip away at this, at what we built. So that's kind of the issue that we have. So we're all going to be affected by this.
Okay, I appreciate it. Any questions from members on the board?
Not at this time.
Thank you, I do appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Leslie Gill.
Good
Thank
morning.
you, Leslie.
Yes, good morning. My name is Leslie Gill, and I'm the CEO of Annie Malone Children and Family Services. And I am a city resident. I'm a lifelong city resident, went to Roddy Kane, graduated from St. Louis University. I feel deeply and personally offended by some of the comments that have been made. But I will start by saying that the chairman made a comment that said that we don't understand the complexity of public safety. And I will tell you each that we do deeply understand the complexity of public safety and the issues that law enforcement face. Because we are on the front lines of crime 24/7, 365 days a year. Annie Malone is often the difference between life and death for kids who are impacted by abuse and neglect. So when you talk about making decisions that impact public safety and law enforcement, that also impacts us directly. So I would just share that at Annie Malone, we have 50 employees. 70% of our employees both live and work in the city of St. Louis. All of our campuses are in the city of St. Louis. Our organization has been providing critical services to the city of St. Louis for 129 years. We are domiciled in the historic Ville neighborhood. We are a pillar in that community. We run a school in that community, and we provide critical services, clinical services, housing, crisis intervention, and basic needs to families every day. So this bill would inhibit us from providing more services to more families who desperately need what we do every day. So I implore the committee to not pass the bill, to not allow voters to even consider something like this, and the impact that it would have on nonprofits. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you heard me, but my family actually owns 3 properties in your ward. So I would just encourage you to think a little more about what impact this bill would have on nonprofits.
And Leslie, obviously, I've thought through it myself, and I've looked at what other cities have done. And
We are not Boston.
I know that we're not Boston, but I don't want to be Detroit.
Well, we're not far, we're on our way, so let's not do this on the backs of nonprofits who are on the front lines of crime every day and working in partnership with law enforcement.
Right, and we have to, obviously, you were here earlier today, and I don't usually engage too much, but you heard what our issues and our problems were in the
We're
city.
on the front line every day. I'm from Annie Malone. I'm not sure if you heard that, but We are fighting crime along with police and law enforcement 24/7, 365 days a year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask?
Yes.
I don't want to ask, Chair, is it okay if I make a suggestion, I ask a question? Is it a way that we can have a sit-down with the non-for-profits to see how we could work together to try to help resolve this issue? Could they play a part in this?
And I'm more than willing to do that. If you'd like to set up something for late one evening, early next week, I'm more than happy to be doing that.
I would welcome the opportunity to host it, so invite anyone to come to the Ville and look at the services we provide.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Are you making millions of dollars when you're not-for-profit?
Making millions?
Yeah, what kind of
No,
money are you
every
making?
dollar that we raise goes back into the community and the programs that we provide.
So this bill will put stress on you, right?
Absolutely.
Probably stress you out of business.
Probably not, because we're deeply committed to city residents and providing necessary services. So it would not necessarily put us out of business, but it would cause a hardship. It would force us into a position to think critically and strategically about the services that we continue to provide.
And how many people you
And how
I
many
don't
people we
think that the
serve.
changes that's going to be made will make a difference in what we already have. I don't know how we're going to go back and make any changes, and I'd like to make a motion that we vote on this today and vote it out of committee today. Mr. Chairman, I move that we vote Board Bill 58 out of committee.
Seeing no second, your motion failed. Leslie, how many employees are at your organization?
We have 50 employees.
All right, because we are considering, and one of the issues that we're considering is to make the exemption to 50. You know,
With all due respect, you know, whether it's us or our partners in this work who have more than 50 employees, if they feel the impact, so do we. So, you know, to the Urban League's point, you know, this impacts us all. We all work collaboratively. We all are fighting for the same dollars every day. And we're trying to create partnerships that allow us to work and stretch the resources farther.
thank you.
Yes.
Kimberly McKinney.
Thank you. I am Kimberly McKinney. I represent Habitat for Humanity St. Louis, and I am a City of St. Louis 8th Ward Shaw resident. I provided a memorandum in advance that sort of cites the numbers, and I'm happy to reiterate those. Habitat is 30 years old in St. Louis. We've built 300 homes in the city. It's an investment of $44 million. 85 cents out of every dollar we raise goes directly into supporting our mission of affordable housing, and we are great at leveraging public-private funds. We bring to the table corporations, faith-based organizations, the universities to help provide affordable housing for St. Louis families. I could talk a lot about the numbers, but what I'm going to share quickly is, as the mayor said, it's not all about cops. This Saturday, Habitat for Humanity St. Louis, along with other nonprofits represented here today, faith-based organizations, is hosting a clean sweep in the Jeff Vanderloo neighborhood. It's been riddled by crime. We're working in partnership and collaboration to clean up a neighborhood. We raised $5,000 to buy materials from it. We didn't ask the city for anything other than to support the effort. So the work that we do collectively, it's not all about police. We're in the game too.
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Joan Ardent. Oh, I'm sorry, Andert.
Thank you. My name is Sister Joan Andert. I'm the CEO and president of Roddy An High School. We've been in the city for 105 years, and we have consistently provided education for students throughout the metropolitan area. And by doing that, we bring together students from all economic groups, from racial groups, from religious groups. Even though we're a Catholic school, we bring all of those groups together, including the religious diversity. I'd like to bring up many of the things that were said before us, but you know, our employees do pay city earnings tax. I mean, I would like that to be recognized. I also want to identify that by being in the city and bringing people into the city who don't already live in the city, our school creates an affinity for the city from throughout for members of the metropolitan community. This is a hardship. You know, we're just happy every time we make payroll. We're not making big money. Our employees also are working for wages below what they could be making in other institutions, in public schools in the county, because they believe in the city. Our students do service in the city, including cleaning our own alley. You know, we need all consideration to fulfill our mission. And should a schools like ours cease to exist, not only would you lose the services, but you would also lose the benefit of taxing the employees 0.5%. I encourage and I'm grateful for those present here today who have said it's an equation that includes a lot more elements than right now we could get this much money on the backs of not-for-profits. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Michael England. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Mike England. I am the president at St. Mary's High School. I am not a resident of the city, although my wife and I are considering coming to the city because I've had such a great experience at St. Mary's. St. Mary's has been an anchor in the Dutchtown neighborhood since 1931. Our mission as a school, though, is changing. It's changing because of the kids that we serve. And what we are about is about helping our kids. 100% of our students this past year and in many years to come graduate. 98% of our students this year went to college. The 2% that did not went into the military. 60% of our young men live in the city. And our mission at St. Mary's is to educate those that cannot afford a Catholic private education. 70% of our young men require financial aid, and half of those families need significant support of at least 75% of our tuition, which is $9,800. St. Mary's raises over $1 million each year. But of that $1 million that we raise, $750,000 of that goes to support our financial aid program, to support our young men. One of the things that I love that's going on at St. Mary's right now has been our community outreach, has been the effect that we are having on our community. We have now at St. Mary's, when the weather is nice, we have a bike rack. It has about 10 or 11 young men that ride their bike to school at St. Mary's. 2 years ago at St. Mary's, we started our first ever service day. Alderwoman Beth Murphy was a part of that. That service day, we came into school, had a prayer service in the morning, fed the boys donuts, and then we shut the school down. And 400 plus faculty, staff, and students went out in the neighborhood, and we covered 4 miles of Grand Avenue, Bates, Merrimack, Virginia, and we picked up trash, and we cut grass, and we pulled weeds, and we painted, and we made a difference. In 2009, St. Mary's was able to purchase a public housing apartment directly behind the school that was really hurting the school because it was filled with a lot of crime and drugs and prostitution. We were able to get that housing apartment knocked down. We built a baseball field on top of it, and once that field went up, 911 calls to the 63111 zip code dropped by 95%. St. Mary's has been and will continue to be a great partner in the city. We want the city to succeed. And the best way that I can see that we can address many of the problems that have been discussed here this morning is to help our kids, and to address their poverty, to address their lack of a quality education, to address their lack of quality opportunities. And that's what we're working to bring at St. Mary's. If this bill were to pass, it would mean that we would have to either do one of two things. A, raise more money, or B, not accept several more young men who we want to have a St. Mary's education. So I thank you for your time listening.
Right, and I would just point out, and not to, I was familiar when Alderman Cohn became the alderman in that area and drove that property that was a big problem down there where the ball field is today. But when you take property offline and make it your ball field, I don't get taxes out of that anymore.
Understood. You also don't get a whole lot of crime.
I realize, and that's my main issue, that we're struggling, and if we don't have the ability, to maintain a police department, then everything that all of you are doing is all for naught.
Absolutely, and that's greatly understood, and that's why we are so focused on the community outreach aspect of it, to try to aid in that effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric Knoll.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Knoll. I'm the Vice President for Operations at St. Louis College of Pharmacy. I was a resident of the city for quite some years, and I've now moved out to the county. Oh, sorry. I have moved down to the county for the same reasons as expressed earlier, as you get more bang for the buck. The city is a great, vibrant place to live. I live in it. I work in it all day long. My wife works in it. We bring our family into it all the time, and we really enjoy it. So one thing I wanted to say is that the college has been around for 154 years. We've been supplying community members, healthcare providers out into our community, into our region for 154 years. The college's viewpoint is that this particular bill would be damaging to us to be able to provide those types of services out in the community. And what I would like to do is the college is going to allow sort of more of a collective voice that you'll hear very shortly, but I just wanted to say those quick words to you.
Thank you. Laurie Phillips.
Hi, I'm Laurie Phillips. I'm the CEO of St. Patrick's Center. I apologize, I'm going to have to leave immediately after I make my comments. St. Patrick's Center has been operating in the city of St. Louis for 35 years. We have 140 employees. They are all based out of the city of St. Louis. I agree with the comments that have been made by everybody else, but I want to make a very brief statement about our work in the community and with the police department. In the past 2 years, the police department has provided, almost embedded a police officer with St. Patrick's Center and other homeless services providers. We work very closely with the police department because we both realize that neither one can do it alone. If you look at the impact of this tax on our staff, it's about a $30,000 impact annually. That may not seem like a lot in relation to the money it would raise, but for us, it's a case manager. If we lose a case manager from our staff, that's approximately 20 to 25 people that we cannot house and provide support services for. So those 20 to 25 people could potentially require calls from first responders for a vast majority of things would be nuisance crimes for our clients. Our clients don't engage primarily in violent crime, but we understand that if we can get people into housing and keep them stable, and what that means is we provide employment training and assistance, educational training and behavioral health services, that reduces the impact on the community to the first responders. And also to your point, Chairman, if we are providing housing stability in the city, that means people are becoming city residents and paying taxes. If we provide them employment services in the city, they are again becoming taxpayers in the city. So I would encourage you all to think very clearly about this bill and encourage you to vote no. Thank you.
Joe Vinachero. Oh, okay, thank you.
Joe is the, I will just briefly speak for him. I'm Tom Buckley. I'm General Counsel for the Archdiocese of St. Louis and a lifelong city resident. Joe is the CFO for Cardinal Ritter Senior Services, and he would have echoed the sentiments that Lori just talked about in terms of impact to the mission that Cardinal Ritter provides to the community.
Mr. Buckley, since you're on my list, just go ahead and you can have your 2 minutes now while you're there.
Thank you. In terms of the Catholic elementary schools in the city of St. Louis, in all areas of the city of St. Louis, I would like this committee to know that we save the city of St. Louis tens of millions of dollars at no cost to the city by educating all of those children. Were those schools to close, City of St. Louis Public Schools would have to educate each of those children at a cost of approximately $15,000 per pupil. So it's in the tens of millions of dollars that the Catholic Church saves the city of St. Louis. I would echo what many of the members of this fine committee have stated, and that is that the nonprofits and the social service agencies behind me are fighting crime on the street day in, day out, not with guns and bullets, but to the same extent. The way out of the crime situation that we have, as the committee members have recognized, is through a change in the culture. And that only comes about through providing health, education, social services, and prayer. That's what these nonprofits behind me provide to the citizens of the city of St. Louis and the city of St. Louis government and the police department, with whom we greatly appreciate the opportunity to work day in, day out, hand in hand. So I would urge the committee to vote no.
Thank you. Karen Wallen-Sack.
Good morning.
Good
Thank you
morning.
for giving me this opportunity. I'm Karen Wallensack. I'm the Executive Director of St. Francis Community Services. I do not live in the city of St. Louis. That is because I am a caregiver for my mother who has dementia, and she happens to live in St. Louis County. So it's not so much a choice against the city, it's my responsibility as her daughter. I work myself. I have worked my entire career in the city of St. Louis since 1979. I have paid the earnings tax willingly because I am there and I understand that the city has to provide me services while I am working in the city, which is, I spend more waking hours in the city, believe me, than in my own home. St. Francis operates 3 locations in the city. We have an office in the Central West End. We have a center that serves primarily immigrants in the Bevo neighborhood, and we have a legal assistance ministry that's housed with the St. Louis University School of Law downtown. Our agency's activities support law enforcement and prevent crime. For example, at our Bevo location, we provide after-school and summer programming for about 120 immigrant children. That keeps them away from gangs and discourages them and gives them alternatives rather than engaging in risky behaviors like trying out drugs. We are a small organization, about 25 people working in the city. I have a $2 million budget, and I'm projecting a great big surplus of $645 next year. We have no room to spare. If this tax is imposed on us, we would have to find a way to cope with between $6,000 and $7,000 that frankly, we just don't have it to pay the tax. I frankly don't think that we can raise it, so I think the only alternative is going to be to cut, which means reducing personnel, probably a half-time person, which means that that person is not paying the city earnings tax, and we would be actually reducing activities, the very activities that are supporting law enforcement and reducing crime. I truly appreciate the position that the city is in. I personally support, paying officers more. I am grateful for everything the city has done for me over the years of my career and everything that we have done for our agency. I hate it and I resent it that this issue is being kind of putting us in a position, nonprofits, of pitting us against law enforcement. That's how it feels, and that's not right.
That's not our intent.
Because we get it. We understand their role. They rely on us, and we rely on them. Alderman Davis said it very well. We need to be talking, and we have done incredible things together, the nonprofit sector and the city, in looking at complex problems like homelessness. There is no reason why we can't work together on this too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bill Kaufman. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Hello, I'm Bill Kaufman. I'm Vice President, General Counsel, and Secretary at St. Louis University. And Dr. Costello, the President, would actually be here today, but for the fact he is out of the country.
Sir, my hearing is very hard.
Oh, you have to lift the microphone up, Bill.
My apologies.
It's a little bit higher.
There you
How are we doing now? Can you hear me?
You're just the tallest speaker today.
Thank you very much. In any event, Bill Kaufman, St. Louis University. And I appear before you today to express concerns, as have my colleagues in the room, about Board Bill 58. There is no doubt, as an institution that's been in this city for now 200 years, that we have real concerns about the questions of safety in our community. Maybe even no more so than on our campus, where we have 13,000 students on a daily basis in a very condensed area. That consequently, because of that, they're very appealing to those who might do harm to them or steal their property. We understand the concerns about public safety, but we respectfully submit that Board Bill 58 is short-sighted and will have grave financial consequences for many organizations that have little to no operating margin. We respectfully suggest that a better solution would be for elected officials, representatives of business, and the nonprofit sector come together and have a much more comprehensive conversation about the issue of how to meet essential services. I would like to specifically address the subject of public safety, and while it is not mentioned, while Board Bill 58 does not purport to mention that the funding would be dedicated to public safety, it has been so represented. Excuse me. Let me tell you what St. Louis University is doing about public safety. St. Louis University presently employs a staff of about 100 people dedicated to public safety for our campus, 80 of whom are licensed by the city. They carry firearms. They are trained. 10 people work in our support staff. 9 people are dispatchers. We have 17 motorized vehicles. We have a bike patrol consisting of 8 people. It creates visibility not only for the property of St. Louis University, but for all of Grand Center. And that public safety department of the university is the primary police department for the university's area. We do not depend on services from the city of St. Louis other than as backup. And so I respectfully submit that we are in a very unique position relative to the fact that we are addressing the subject of public safety. And public safety is not just people. Over the past 2 years, we've spent $1.2 million installing 110 cameras on exterior locations to enhance security in Midtown. And new cameras are being installed in our 2 new residence halls, and an additional $300,000 will be invested to upgrade older cameras. And oh, I neglected to tell you, we're spending $6 million a year on our public safety department. Add up those numbers and we're almost to $9 million on an annual basis. One other point on public safety. We would be very interested in partnering even more with the city of the police department of the city. We enjoy an extraordinarily good relationship. and that there are things that we think we can do. We currently are exploring with the city the possibility of connecting our camera system with the city so that they can use the license identification system to immediately detect persons who may be wanted for various offenses. But like many of the other social agencies that have spoken today, in addition to providing those services, we also do things for and in the city. We are a part of the community as a part of our mission. For example, we have 20 of our academic units currently working with the City of St. Louis Division of Corrections to provide social support for men and women who've been recently released from jail so as to avoid the challenges that occur from recidivism. Our College of Public Health and Social Justice recently assisted the city's health department in creating a map of lead exposure risks for the city. And each year, the university partners with the city's agency on aging, to perform maintenance for seniors and disabled people who are at risk. Then we also have volunteer services. This past year, in what is called our Make a Difference Day, 2,832 residents, members of the university community, engaged in a full day of work for the city of St. Louis. That is valued by the Department of Labor at $361,000. In addition, over the course of a year, university staff, faculty, and students donate $1.6 million of hours, 1.6 million hours of community service. To figure that out, that's 160 years of service.
Bill, can we?
We can.
We're trying to keep people to 2 or 3 minutes.
I can.
Thank you.
Also remember that we were the very first university in the United States to provide a campus kitchen. What does that do? It provides food services. Last year we provided 25,000 meals to needy members of the St. Louis community. And like other operating entities, you might think we have 4,576 employees, we have money to burn. We have an operating deficit this year of $17.5 million. On March 7, we said goodbye to 150 of our employees, and we eliminated another 120 positions as a part of this right-sizing of the university. So in closing, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the additional time, I appreciate it, we recognize the importance and the challenges that you have as a part of the elected officials of this city to provide to address the issues of crime and security in our region. But we do suggest that there is a better way to proceed than with the passage of Board Bill 58. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to stand for questions, if any.
Thank you. Rose Wynn-Miller? We're holding the universities as tight as we can. I went to SLU, my older brother went to WashU.
There's no competition.
I
We
realize
love them
that.
both, and they both are in the city of St. Louis. Good morning. Thank you so much for hearing me. I appreciate your patience and your leadership. My name is Rose Wynn-Miller. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor of Government and Community Relations at Washington University. Much of what Bill Kaufman said, I actually will defer to him on because it reflects the university's position as well. I will tell you that Washington University is in a unique situation. We actually are located in 4 municipalities: unincorporated St. Louis County, Clayton, University City, and the city of St. Louis. The majority of our 13,000 employees work at the medical school, which is wholly located in the city of St. Louis. We are very proud to be part of the community, and we're committed to supporting efforts to make St. Louis the best place it can be. We recognize that the city of St. Louis faces many challenges, including meeting citizens' needs with limited resources. One of the greatest and most universal needs is ensuring safety of residents and visitors. Enhancing public safety is important to all of us, and it should be a top priority. Creating a safe environment is not solely limited to investments in public safety. It also includes support of neighborhoods, a commitment to education, and access to quality health care. Investments in these areas will build strong communities, healthy, knowledge-based citizens who work, play, and live together in our communities. I am going to address one issue, and that's the amount of money that the university spends on safety and security in the city of St. Louis alone. Between the Danforth campus, the portion that is in the city of St. Louis, and the medical school, we spend over $5 million a year on safety. We feel like we provide good safety, not just for the people who come to our campuses, but also the people who visit. We have blue light phones, we have security cameras, we put $2 million worth of lighting along Skinker. We're very committed to this, and we understand the services are needed.
Just so I want everybody to understand, you see people leaving, there's a transportation meeting across the way. It isn't that they're disinterested. They're on that committee, so they have to make a quorum. So some of the guys are over there just so they can get a vote, and then they'll be back, I'm sure. I'm actually going to have to go there in a few minutes, but so they got a transportation meeting.
I understand. I'm
So
not the one getting the hook.
And I'm sorry. I just didn't want you to think that everybody's walking out. I would think the majority of them will be back.
I appreciate that. I'll finish quickly.
Oh, you're fine.
We are committed to finding long-term solutions to the difficult problems our city faces. As an educational and healthcare provider, we stand ready to participate in conversation with all partners. That includes the nonprofit sector, the business community, and you as elected officials to address our collective need for investments to provide city services. I will say that imposing a payroll tax on nonprofits is probably short-sighted and will definitely adversely affect the ability of organizations to provide the services that they need. I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Let me see I'm not sure where Steve left off. It looks like, okay, so Walters? It's hard to see how the first name, last name Walters. They may have left. Okay, so it looks like Truman then. And again, the writing's hard for me to see, so. Or Tamman? Thaman? That'll work. Yep, that's it. It's just hard for me to see this, I'm sorry, the writings. We're gonna have to get people to print.
Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Doug Thaman. I'm with the Missouri Charter Public School Association and representing the 31 charter public schools who are all nonprofits, over 11,000 students and over 20,000 parents who do reside in the city of St. Louis. As I said, these are all nonprofits, and the passage of this payroll tax would cause the redirection of money that right now goes directly to the education of students. It could go anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 per school, which may not seem like a lot of money when we're talking about millions of dollars. However, we are talking about the loss of classroom teachers, the loss of resources, the loss of education to children. And so I echo what's been already expressed here today, and we certainly understand the intent and the need for additional public safety resources, but urge you not to allow this at the expense of our children's education. So, thank you.
Thank you. And like I said, I'm active in Gateway Science Academy, so. Ronald Green, and thank you for printing.
Thank you. I'm Ronald Green. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Boy Scouts of America Greater St. Louis Area Council. We've been in the city of St. Louis for over 100 years. I'm personally not a city resident, nor uniquely am I from the St. Louis region. We do have in the city about 60 employees. Most of them are city residents. Obviously, we all pay city income tax. All of them eat in lunches in the city, do business in the city, buy cars, bank in the city. We also bring millions of dollars into the city. Probably 90% of our income comes from outside of the city, and it overwhelmingly goes to serve young people in the city. So one of the points that I wanted to make, like all of the other social service agencies we heard earlier, We are an important part of the public safety efforts of the city of St. Louis, and like them, not to pile on, but we are a net contributor, and most of us are significant net contributors. And in fact, a lot of our vendors, if you look at it, a lot of our dollars are part of the payroll taxes that for-profit companies pay when we do business with them in the city. I would also tell you, like everybody else in the social service sector, we all strive to have 80 or more % of our expenditures going towards program and services. So, you know, when you listen to all of this, I don't like to complain and say, oh, it's a hardship, but I do think there's a reason why a lot of us are tax exempt, and it is because we're making a net contribution to the city. I did want to address a couple of questions that came up in the hearing this morning. We do have multiple locations. While we would probably keep a presence in the city, we could easily reduce the number of people working in the city, and frankly, if we did that, it would be the higher dollar people on our payroll that would be placed in other offices outside the city. The other things I thought I would just, as I sat there and listened, number one, as a person not representing the Boy Scouts, but as a person, I applaud all of you and the efforts to help the police and firefighters. As someone not from this region, public safety to me is the number one issue that this area faces, and specifically the city. And I know when we budget for our agency, we budget first our priorities, so our first dollars go towards our highest priorities. We don't look for additional funds to fund the most important things. And so it is a little disturbing that while it's not the intent, it could look like that the nonprofit community are freeloaders and we're trying to get them to pay their fair share. And so the other point I wanted to make is by putting this on the ballot, just human nature, it will lead to even further expenditures for public relations to tell the nonprofit story and again take more money out of serving children and young people and those most in need in our city. And so we would urge you to vote no on this issue, not to put it on the ballot. And again, just personally, I applaud what you're doing. To me, I come from New York City where there is a police officer on every corner, and we do not have enough police. And certainly they, you know, to my thinking, they deserve every dollar they get, and they should be amongst our best paid people. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. So Tom Sullivan. And, I mean, there's not, just so everybody knows, there's not going to be a vote today, and I'm pretty sure, just by the discussion, this is probably going to go on for, you know, not just today, but I think there's going to, sounds like there's going to need to be a lot more discussion before anything goes on. I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, greetings to you all. My name is Tom Sullivan. I'm Senior Vice President of Sports and Operations for the Matthews Dickey Boys and Girls Club. Matthews Dickey Boys and Girls Club has been around for over 60 years, and I've been there for over 44. And I grew up here at Sumner High School. I went to Sumner High School, and then I also graduated from St. Louis University. So I've been in the city a long time. I eventually moved, just chasing a better life. That's all it was to it. We serve a large population of the city in children, and our mission is to build better citizens of this great city, this great community, as well as the great state. And we feel that we've been very successful in that. Our products outside the children is our contributors who do not want us to pay taxes, and we do a lot of grant writing just as the people we collaborate with does. And most grants that we get do not allow us to use that money to pay taxes also. I understand the task that you're faced with, and I understand crime prevention. I understand police work. My son was a policeman. He eventually got out. I have another son that's a United States probationary officer. I believe he's done a fine job, and I have a son that served in the Army with Afghanistan tours, and now he's paying for it because bullets were flying over his head, and well, he has to be taken care of. He wasn't physically injured, but emotionally that's the challenge, and I believe police work is the same way. One of our objectives is simply just to serve the child, and a child costs us an average of $600 a year, and using monies to pay taxes will take that away from a child, and that's a child we will not be able to help. And just to give you an example, some of the things we help families with that allows them to put more back into the city. Today, as we speak, we run a summer day camp like many of us do, and each child, they pay an average of $8 a day for breakfast, lunch, classes, athletics, all day, where their parents can go to work. And so we believe we're doing a very good job, and we believe that this bill will hamper some of the services that we would give children, and therefore we encourage you to vote no against this bill.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
I appreciate the work you guys do. Mr. Polk, Steve Polk? There's 6 more speakers after Mr. Polk, so just to give you a timeline if you're interested.
Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Steve Polk. I am a resident of the city, living in St. Louis Hills. I also have my business here. I am here today as a volunteer for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, where I chair the Voice of the Poor Committee, which is our advocacy initiative that we have underway with the council now. I'm also here today as a member of the Board of Directors of St. Vincent de Paul. I am a district president of the Gravois District, and I represent my home conference of St. Gabriel the Archangel. St. Vincent de Paul is an international, not-for-profit Catholic lay organization that traces its roots in the U.S. Right here to St. Louis and to the old cathedral back in 1865. Today within the Archdiocese of St. Louis, we have roughly 3,000 volunteers who work daily to serve the needs of the poor in our community. These are all volunteers. We serve somewhere in the range of 300,000 people in our area on a yearly basis. Our office is at Choteau and Papin, where 19 staff members reside. We also have a thrift store at Kings Highway in Christie, where we have roughly another 20 or so employees. So we do, in the city, we have more than the 20 that's currently being considered here. We have a total of 155 employees throughout the metropolitan area. We have 7 thrift stores that we operate, and will soon be 8. The 8th will open probably next month. Today and every day, our focus is on our neighbors, the people who are struggling to manage their day-to-day life and provide for financial necessities for their families, like food and clothing, a bed to sleep in, or to battle the sometimes oppressive summer heat that we have with an air conditioner or a fan. Just this month, I've seen requests come in for as little as $20 to $40 to help a family bridge over a weekend when they don't have the money to buy food for the kids. I've seen requests as high as $12,000 for a single mother and a family who needed repairs to their home and payment with rent and utilities and that sort of thing. Our purpose for being here is to present our concern, as many of the others have, that this bill, which will cost our organization money, will actually be taking money away from the people that we serve. In effect, the bill will provide additional stress for their perilous situation that they find themselves in every single day. And we have no objection to the concept of additional public safety. I think that is a worthy goal. So we urge you to consider these folks that we deal with who may be getting as little as $20 or $40 for food, and recognize that this will impact our ability to service those people.
I served on St. Vincent de Paul. I get what they do.
Yep. So thank you.
Thank you. June Falls or Fall? June, June, there you are. And again, thank you for printing.
Absolutely. Thank you for holding this hearing today on an issue that matters to everyone in our community. Public safety is key to helping St. Louis be an even better place to live, work, and play. As I said, my name is June McAllister Fowler. I am a resident of the City of St. Louis and also Senior Vice President of Communications, Marketing, and Public Affairs for BJC Healthcare. We have our headquarters in the city, and two of our largest hospitals, Barnes Jewish and St. Louis Children's Hospital, are located in the city. The leaders of those hospitals chose to remain in the city when in the 70s and 80s, many other hospitals moved to St. Louis County. I'm here today to urge this committee to please take a more comprehensive look at solutions to address public safety in our city. I'm also here to pledge that BJC wants to be helpful to this process. This doesn't mean, however, that we are supportive of the proposal to begin taxing nonprofit organizations. We instead support an inclusive process that brings government, business, and nonprofits to the table to explore short-term and long-term sustainable solutions to public safety. Like St. Louis University and Washington University, BJC currently provides a number of services, including covering the cost of security on our campuses and in surrounding neighborhoods. Because we do this, this allows police to cover other parts of the community. We look forward to working with city leaders as we have in the past and request that this committee consider all of the implications and potential unintended consequences of taxing nonprofit organizations before approving or even moving Board Bill 58 forward. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Kate Becker. Thanks, Kate.
I would say good morning, but I think it's almost good
No,
afternoon.
I know. And, you know, and I know, like I said, people are going to other things. And if I were listening, I would, and listening to the committee, if nothing else, I think this is just going to stimulate further talks. It doesn't seem that the committee's that willing to do, but I think if this does nothing but bring in more conversation, and I'm really glad that this all came together, and I apologize. Kate, thanks for printing.
Oh, thank you. My name's Kate Becker. I'm the president of SSM Health St. Louis University Hospital. And as you're probably aware, we have two hospitals in the city, St. Louis University Hospital, which we chose to come back to a year and a half ago, and to which we've committed the building of a $550 million new facility in the city. That'll bring 700 FTEs during peak construction into the city. And we still have Cardinal Glennon in the city. We chose to remain there from 1956 till today. We agree with everything everyone has said, and we really appreciate Alderwoman Davis's comments, particularly since she is the chair of the Transportation Committee and was able to make time to come back to this hearing because she understands how important this issue is to the nonprofits in our community. I do want to mention just a couple of things that are specific to SLU Hospital and to the hospitals of the city. The first one is, it is incredibly unfortunate that the sponsor of this bill has described us as a burden on the community.
Yes, sorry.
Not only did the city choose to close its hospitals, making Barnes Hospital and St. Louis University Hospital the hospitals for the city of St. Louis, but we have partnered for years successfully with the police department and the fire department. When there is a case of an overdose, it is us, the police, bring those patients to. When there is a homeless person and it's cold or it's hot and they're starving and there's no room for them anywhere, it is our emergency room where the policemen bring them. We are partners with the city, and we have been partners with the city In public safety, which is not even mentioned in Board Bill 60, we have partnered with the police department in many different ways, and we have partnered with the fire department. It was incredibly hurtful for the sponsor of this bill to say that the fire department is all the time called to bring patients into the emergency rooms of our hospitals. Our hospital raised the money to put 12 lead electrocardiography machines into the ambulances of the fire department of St. Louis. We have been supportive of this community, and we employ thousands of people here. So those are some specific things that are different about healthcare. It's also incredibly unfortunate that the timing of this bill comes when healthcare is under assault from Washington, D.C. To say that now is the time to ask us to step up and pay an additional tax when we have no idea where our revenue is coming from or what's going to happen to us on a national level is really unfortunate. So we wanted to make those points and share that with you. We'd echo everyone else's comments in terms of wanting to be in this resource-scarce environment. We understand the problems you're facing. We face the same ones. We want to partner with this city. We want to build the safety net together and make it stronger with all of these nonprofits who you've heard from. This bill rips a hole in the net. So we would ask that you vote no.
Thank you. Anthony Lloyd, and again, thanks for printing.
Hello, my name is Anthony Lloyd. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Mid-America Transplant. We've been around for 40 years within St. Louis. I would echo what my other folks have said, not only in the nonprofit but in the healthcare space. At Mid-America, we're in the business of getting people back to health and back to being tax-paying citizens of St. Louis and throughout our designated service area. So I would just want to close out by saying we would definitely support not bringing this vote before the people of St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica Zoll. And again, thanks for printing. And then there's one person after that. If you weren't called and your name's not on here, then we'll still bring you up, okay? Somehow, maybe she didn't get on there. I'm sorry, Erica.
Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Erica Zoll.
We have 2 minutes left.
And I'm the Director of Development and External Affairs at KIPP St. Louis Schools. I've spent most of my entire 30-year career working in the city. I've lived in the city for many years until a couple of years ago when I remarried and moved into my husband's home in University City. However, I continue to spend more of my time in the city either at our KIPP schools located in North St. Louis and the Fox Park neighborhood, or at our office located downtown than I do in my home where I reside. At KIPP, our tagline is work hard, be nice. We are in the service of providing a rigorous college prep education while also fostering the importance of positive character development in our students who reside in the city of St. Louis. Salaries and benefits for our teachers, school leaders, and administrators make up about 65 to 70% of our annual budget. Currently, we employ 200 staff in our 5 schools. We plan to add an additional KIPP elementary school next year. As we grow the number of students we serve from 1,600 today to nearly 3,300 in 5 years, we will obviously grow the number of staff in our schools as well. Our number one goal is to help our students climb the mountain to and through college. With this proposed change, we would have to pay $55,000 next year in employment tax dollars. The impact this change would have on our budget would mean that over the next 5 years, we would have to reduce services, possibly including the free transportation we provide to our families to ensure that their children get to school. We are serving the children who need us the most. I'm sorry that the work we do sounded like it's a burden to our city. Please consider the impact this tax will have on our schools, our community, and our children, and keep the current structure in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Flint from the Boys and Girls Club, and I probably murdered that, but
Good morning still. Well, good afternoon.
you got 1 minute for morning still. We're still on morning.
My name is Flint Fowler, and I'm the president of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater St. Louis, formerly known as Herbert Hoover. Boys and Girls Club located at North Grand and Dodier. I'm an Eagle Scout, so I participate in the scouting program, one of the nonprofits that might be affected. took karate lessons at the old Page Park YMCA, which is now known as the Monsanto Y, and I learned to swim at Wold Center when I was a kid. So I've been a lifelong city resident. My wife and I own a home in the city. We also own another property where our son lives, so he lives in the city, and we all work in the city. So the city of St. Louis is extremely important to us. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Many of the kids that come to the club, and we serve nearly 7,000 young people, daily pass 2 hourly motels, drugstores, or liquor stores, I would say, a grocery store that primarily sells liquor, and a nightclub. And so we're the only positive site or facility on North Grand when they come to see us. Thanks to the hard work of Congressman Clay and some support from former Alderman Bosley, we've worked with the EPA and others to have the Carter Carburetor building demolished. It stood there vacant for nearly 30 years, an eyesore and a deterrent to the city, something that I was ashamed of to look at on a daily basis, and was ashamed of the city for allowing it to sit there for such a long time. And as a result, we had to spend more than $100,000 a year on security to watch cars and to protect our building at nighttime. We still use that security service because we know police don't have the opportunity to come and take over that spot. Our children pay basically $25 a year to be a member of the club, and you've heard from Tom at Matthews Dickey about what it costs us to serve a child a year. It's my understanding that it's nearly $30,000 or more to incarcerate a child in the juvenile justice system. So the fact that we have these programs and experiences in place saves the city or saves the taxpayers significant dollars each and every year. Most of our money comes from individuals who believe in our mission, organizations like the United Way, and other personal gifts that people make available to us. Paying a tax on our payroll would require us to go out and solicit those donors more, which means they would in fact be taxed because they'd have to give that money to us to support the programs and activities that we do. So we're not in favor of this bill because we believe our nonprofits deliver quality services to our community. We help keep young people safe, and we help provide positive experiences with them to help them graduate from school on time, graduate from high school on time, go to college, the military, or the trade school, and in fact keep young people safe and out of prison. More than 52% of our alumni said that the Boys and Girls Club literally saved their life. So if it had not been for those experiences, who knows where they might be today. So I think it's important for the committee to also understand that it's really not about the size of the nonprofit organization, whether they employ 20 people or 20,000 people. It's the partnerships that have occurred among us that really have made the difference. One of the locations that we operate in the city of St. Louis is at the Adams Park Community Center, attached to the Adams Park School. A nonprofit helped to reopen that neighborhood school, built the community center, and asked us to come and run programs for kids, and helps to fund the running of those programs. And more than 200 young people a day come to receive services, academic support services, leadership programs, and character development experiences. So the city does not pay any of that. That's all done within the nonprofit network. So again, I would encourage you to vote no on this proposition and allow the nonprofits to continue to do what they do well. Thank you.
I appreciate the Boys Club fact, they actually, because I used to do a lot with them, they made me an honorary member, and I got the plaque in my office. So now we're to people that somehow either we skipped or, so certainly you can come up first. And have I skipped anyone else? Or anyone else feel like they want to talk? And then I think we'll, just for the people here, we might, if anybody has questions or comments, we're going to do that, and then we'll be out of here shortly.
I'm Ann Geckner. I should be on the list somewhere. I'm with Humane Society of Missouri, and we have been serving the city of St. Louis community for almost 150 years, and we have 150 employees in the city. have heard many of the other organizations say what I'm going to say, in that it's a trade-off. We need more police officers, but we'll be reducing our services to fund the tax. So we are your partner now. The Humane Society spends over $1 million annually taking care of city strays. We receive 5,500 unwanted stray animals annually from city zip codes, and this is preventing the spread of disease and protecting our community safety. We've spent $6.5 million and taken in 25,000 stray animals since the city made the decision to close the animal shelter at Gasconade in 2010. We do that with donations, and our donors are happy to make sure that our city is safe and get these animals in a good situation, which is our shelter. We spend $550,000 a year annually to do no-cost, low-cost spay-neuter programs in the city, servicing 6,300 pets a year to keep the overpopulation of pets down in the city. And that will reduce your city animal control dollars that you have to spend. We also have a professional rescue unit that works with city prosecution and collecting evidence, and with law enforcement to prosecute cases of animal abuse, et cetera. So we are your partner now, and we are really happy to be your partner. We also are providing humane education programs to build character in children at high-risk situations, and they tend to be many city schools that we are reaching out to. So if this tax would come into play, it would reduce the services that we're able to provide to the city in these areas. We appreciate working in a safe area, and we need safety. We hope that we can find another alternative to funding the police department and the fire department. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So, let me go down my seniority here. Alderman Davis, you're recognized if you want to make a statement before we close.
Okay. Very quickly for me, this is very simple. I've been blessed that I've had a corporate background as well as a nonprofit background in work. Former social worker for the state, director of several nonprofits. I understand the plight, and I'm very real when it comes to budgeting. So for those who don't know, my first statement when we started dealing with our city budget this year was, we need to get real and we need to deal with our budget appropriately. I'm ready to deal with my budget here first. And anybody that worked with me or was around when I was president of the school board, when we had our challenges there, we ended the D6 settlement, I dealt with that budget. I took $78 million out of a budget of about close to $1 billion. It's easy to do. Because you have to know that as you evolve with modern technology, and if you're not using it, you should be using it. When you have too many positions that are just there, you got to deal with it. Doesn't matter whether that's your friend or your family. We're going to be real. The next part of this is that when you don't have a conversation with those who are supporting your city in the most serious way, before you present something like this, it is just unconscionable. I am sorry. I apologize. Had I known about it, I would have told you earlier. I would have convened a meeting publicly so we could have come up with some better ways to do this. Most especially not rush into something. You see, we have taxied our citizenship so much in the last few years. We have gone from one supposed crisis to another. We have got people so confused. We have got communities where the residents used to be neighbors who are arguing with each other and don't speak anymore because of our ineptness, and we keep putting things on their shoulder. I'm tired of it. I just said that to one of my neighborhood organizations 2 nights ago. It is not fair to you. We should not be doing this. So I'm going to suggest that this is postponed, taken off the table. We come to our community. We work together. There are a lot of things that can be proposed and done without spending an additional dollar. And I want to remind you so you can tell your constituency, because all of you all have a lot of volunteers. That's the only way you make it work. We have money budgeted for the 100-plus police officers. We just simply need to fill the positions. Nobody came and asked us for additional 24 police officers, because that's not going to solve any problem on earth. If you look at the national statistics, what the federal system says, FBI and everybody else, we have enough police officers based on other cities and how many police officers they have per population. We have more than enough, but they're not filled. So that's another thing we can do together, is to help fill these positions. I want us to work together. I will never support anything like this. Thank you.
Alderman Moore? Any, no statements or anything?
I'm ready to vote.
Well, we don't have the people to vote. Reading the message. Just wanted to, Alderwoman Murphy.
I have no comments other than to thank everyone for coming down and spending so much time with us. It was very enlightening, and I am familiar with all the organizations, support a lot of them, you know, financially and physically through the years. I'm a product of the Archdiocese and whatnot, and so I really appreciate all the time that you spent down here to enlighten us. Thank you.
Just reading something real fast here. So, anyway, the chairman just sent a text, just let everybody know that, let's see, let me read, so I put it in his words, so.
That's the safer way to do it.
Well, no, just that there's no vote on this bill. I've already promised the institutes we would do it next week. It's not negotiable. The motion already failed. So what had happened earlier, and there's not enough people to take a vote, I believe that had we, when Alderman Moore made his motion to take a vote, there was no second on it, which means it didn't move forward. Had there been a second.
When did he do it? When I was gone.
No, he did it while you were sitting here. He did it close to, everybody was sitting here. Well, I'm not going to argue who was here and who wasn't here. Had he would have made that motion at the time, we would have taken a vote. I kind of believe, based off of what I'm seeing from, I'm pretty sure that this bill won't pass. So next week, there'll be a vote. And, you know, again, I don't know that the flavor of anybody's going to change either which way. I would have to say that, you know, I don't think when the chairman was saying a burden, I don't think he meant that. I think what he was, you have to understand him, he's kind of gruff in his speaking, but I think what he meant is that we're faced with the citizens, businesses saying we're moving out of the city, we're afraid. And the only reason I brought up whether or not you live in the city is because I got a brother and sister that are afraid to come in the city. They're like, oh my God, you live in the city. And they want to know why I haven't moved. And people are afraid to live here. And we're faced as aldermen. How do we do that? How do we take care of the buildings that are so blighted in this city, in Alderman Moore's ward that he brings up? Drive through his neighborhood. Do it. And you'll understand why we have to come up with ways to figure out how. If this bill did nothing more than bring everybody to the table to start a discussion, maybe it's not this particular bill, maybe there's things that we can work together to help fund stuff, but if we don't fun stuff. And if we don't fix areas in the city of St. Louis, we're not going to have to worry about my brother and sister coming in to visit me. We're going to have to worry about people leaving, and they are. So I just wish nobody would take offense to this bill. I think it isn't going to have legs to get through, but I am glad at least it's brought forth a discussion. And with that, I guess if no one else has a comment, thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate all your time and having to sit through all the other business we did, but thank you all for coming out today. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, here I come.